Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the MagicJank podcast, the podcast where members of Team MagicJank get together every week and discuss the latest happenings in Magic the Gathering. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been kind of looking at the murders of Karlov Manor from a couple of different perspectives. And today, we're almost here, folks. The 0 hour is upon us, and we've had some pre-releases behind us in some cases. And, we're in the middle of pre-release weekend. I know, so me jealous. Too, if I'm completely honest.
Collector boosters there. Favretto flashing the boosters for those who are listening in an audio-only medium.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, in video we've got some cardboard on the flash on the screen. Good times. In any event, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So my name's Graham. I go by Hamhawks42, and I'm joined by two illustrious gentlemen that I'm very happy to be sharing the mic with. Oh yeah, no, for sure. And so let's start off with Damien. Damien F16 in the house. How we doing, my friend?
I'm excellent. It's almost time for a new set. It's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Sadly, no early access, boo. But still looking forward to the new set. Haven't gotten to play with it yet. Didn't get to make to a pre-release, sadly. But other than that, doing well. How about you, Ham?
Doing well. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, normally my pre-release itch kind of gets scratched with those streamer events because it's like, oh, I can roll up my sleeves and tinker with all the new stuff. And now we just have to be ready on release day. Just kind of like, like everybody else. Which, to be fair, I don't necessarily think the streamers need like super duper privileges. Honestly, I just wish they had an early access event where they just opened it up to everybody with like getting new cards for everybody, but they're like Phantom.
Wow.
And then
I like special privileges. I think we should have special privileges.
Okay, fair enough.
But anyway, you're right. I guess we don't deserve it. I guess.
Anyway. In any event, I wish we had changed the other way around, but whatever. And we also have Carlo C5 Jr. How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, hello everybody. How we doing? I'm just coming back from, at the time of this recording, playing pre-releases all weekend over at my LGS. So got to play lots of Karlov Manor Limited, sealed with the new play boosters, which was interesting because, it was interesting.
And we got one question.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this.
We got these cool little new dossier style treatment cards.
I noticed which one you picked there to show off.
Carlo's showing one of the new cards where they look like a file, like a manila folder or whatever with a file, but they all look like white cards. My one complaint about those, as an aside here, I really wish they looked a little bit more like the colors they're in. They all just look like white cards. I don't know. But, very
they
cool.
actually have like the faintest tint of the color in paper, but it's very hard to tell.
Huh. Interesting.
And did you see one of the invisible ink ones? I know somebody in my channel pulled one of those.
I actually did a box opening the other night of the collector boosters, and I got one of those invisible ink mole gods.
Ooh.
And they feel very textured, both on the bottom and they're glossy, like over top. Like the photo image on top is very glossy.
Interesting.
Cool. Wow, sweet. So you've got your hands on the new cards. No issues from a cardboard perspective. Potato chipping. Some of these other sets, master sets, like all the issues we've had. No issues so far.
Yeah, no issues so far. Not even with the foils in the pre-release kit, because they gave you 2 foil promo cards in each pre-release kit. You could only play one. That was your stamped one. But you couldn't play one of the 3 cards. The Voja, the Melik, or the Tomic.
Tomic,
yeah. You couldn't play those. They are in standard, though. They have the set symbol, but they aren't in booster packs. So the only way you can get them is randomly getting them through the pre-release kits.
Big pet peeve. I hate that. They did this before. You didn't know that, Ham?
I didn't realize that they were exclusive. Like Vohad, Jaws of the Conclave.
Nexus of Fate, same thing. Remember Nexus of Fate? What they did? Yeah, same idea. When they limited release cards like that, I had 2 people in my pre-release. One guy lives in Australia, so he actually was already playing the pre-release. It was Friday our time, but he had done it, or it was Saturday our time. He had done it already, and he said that they started round 1 and they were halfway through round 1 when the judge came around and said you can't use these cards, and he had built his whole deck around Tomic or whatever his name is.
Oh sure,
and had to take it out of his deck and replace it with something, and I was like, what? I can't believe, why would they put cards in your pool that you can't use? That is really feel bad, but not to mention the rarity thing and the money issue.
I know in
Yeah.
March of the Machine they had a couple of promo cards, but I believe that they were marked
Right.
with the commander stamp.
They were.
And therefore they weren't standard legal.
Exactly
And so,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
then
that's
you
a
have
different thing.
You still have the
Yeah.
issue of, like, why is this in the pre-release kit?
Yeah.
You know, because then it's on me to understand that.
But
which
these,
is,
correct me if I'm wrong, Carlo, but I heard these were in the booster with all the other cards that you are able to play. Were they in a separate sleeve or something? Or were they
always for the pre-release kits? So you have your 6 booster packs, and
Right.
then you have a clear pack that has your promo card. It has the arena code that gives you 6 packs of the set on arena. That's only limited 1 per account. And they give you usually like tokens. In this case, it was the punch out tokens for like suspect or case solved to show
Right.
that. And then it gave you this other promo card that was individually in a separate
okay,
pack.
so separate. Okay, somebody had told me. I thought maybe it was in the pack of like I don't know, playable. Like they didn't give you like a set, like a booster specifically for this set, like they did in some of the other sets. Like,
Right. Yeah. No seeded pack.
nothing like that. Seeded pack. Thank you. Yeah. Right. Okay. Interesting. Cool. So you want to get into some of the cards? How did you do, by the way?
yeah,
First
how
of
was the
all?
pre-release? Like,
So
yeah.
I played in 5 regular pre-releases and a 2-headed giant event. Yeah,
Wow.
yesterday. So at the time of this recording, y'all, on Friday I played in 2, right? So 1 in late afternoon and night, and then on Saturday I played 11 hours on the stream. I streamed the whole thing. VOD's available on my channel. I played
Nice.
from 11 a.m. in the morning to then whatever the next one was, like 3 p.m. and then 7 p.m. And it was a marathon. But we
kidding.
went undefeated in all the pre-releases, except
Wow.
the last one on Saturday. I dropped a match.
Oh, wow.
And then
Wow.
today in the 2-headed giant pre-release with my buddy Seth, we went 2-1 as a team. I had 2 Niv Mizzets in my deck, and my entire deck was multicolor.
Oh my god.
Dude.
So
It was very fun.
It worked? Niv Mizzet actually did the thing? And
It did.
Oh, wow.
It did.
Awesome.
I even got to cast for a game win the card Treacherous Greed. So in 2-headed giant, you have a shared life total of 30. So anything that says each opponent actually doubles. So Treacherous Greed said their team lost 6 life.
Oh, yeah.
I
that
gain
card.
3 and draw 3 cards for 3 mana.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Incredible.
And you have to sack a creature that dealt damage this turn. For those
Yep.
of you who haven't seen the card yet, it's an instant rare, white-black rare from the new set. Wow, sweet. That sounds like a lot of fun. And great records, too. Like, so you came out of there with how many packs? What did you win? What was
So
the
our
haul?
store is very casual. We just do 1 pack per win.
why
Unless you
you're
go
undefeated.
undefeated, then you get 4 booster packs. So,
Okay.
you know, it was fun. It was fun. We got to open lots of boosters. We played a lot of games. Disguise, like, it makes me realize how much I've missed Morph.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure Headology talked about this last week on the podcast, Discussed Unlimited. You can just play all the disguise creatures for 3 mana, and if the mana in your deck produces a color that allows for that card to flip up, it's probably worth it to play. So, like, I was playing like a Boros deck, but had a Golgari, or what was it? I had the red-black creature that flipped up for 3, and then red-black hybrid. You can play that card face down, 2/2, ward 2 for 3 mana, and if you can flip it up, great. If you can't, that's probably fine because your opponent's not getting rid of this creature on the board, or you're trading with another disguised creature, because that's huge. Like, I think 2 drops are huge in this format. 2 power creatures that you can play early is huge in this format for that reason. Yes, Shady Informant. That's the card.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Oh
Shady
yeah,
Informant.
he's great. Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
and he's double black. He flips up for double black. So even if you're not playing red, you can still just jam this in any black deck, white black deck, etc.
Yep.
Talking about this
exactly.
with my sealed
Yeah.
article.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. 'Cause so the idea that this is a Boros card, like, wait, what? But yeah,
Well,
no,
but
totally
the-
can be. Yeah.
Like the big question going into the format, into this limited format, is this isn't 2015 or whatever, or 2010, whenever cons came out. How good is a gray ogre with Ward 2? Because a Grey Ogre is not playable in Limited in 2024. A Grey Ogre, I mean a 3-mana 2/2. So if you are playing 3-mana 2/2s that have Ward 2, how good were they? Is the format slow enough that they're fine? Were they bad? Were they okay? Were they... Yeah.
Yeah, so from my experience, the format is much slower. I know there's been tons of chatter. Is this a format where you play 18 lands? I don't think so. We played 17 in each format, or each pre-release. But it definitely is slower. The best one drop, hands down, is the Inspector for 1 white that lets you get
Novice
a blue token.
Detective. Yeah, we'll talk about him today, I think.
That card's crazy. As you know, that Thraben Inspector was crazy in those draft formats.
Sure, absolutely.
You know,
and constructed.
For sure.
Yeah.
We'll touch on that.
And but I think it's slow enough because you really get to test your opponents. You're gonna block my 2/2 with Ward 2? Is my disguised creature better than yours underneath that we don't know about? Is yours a win condition in your deck? Who knows? But you get to line up a lot of those turns. And what it does is it turns your 4 and 5 mana and 6 mana creatures into 3 mana creatures. So your curve is a lot better in these decks that you're building. And it allows you to really play your big payoffs as cheap creatures and hold up removal or hold up a counter spell. Depends which card you're playing. The color that really was disappointing, that I found that I didn't actually pull a lot of blue cards out of my play boosters in all the formats. The very first pre-release I played Dimir because I had so many blue flyers. The rest of the booster packs, I just didn't happen to open up many blue cards. So making a deck with that didn't work.
So you can't extrapolate and say yet that blue might not be a great color here. It just might. Yeah, this is sealed. And especially with play boosters, the variance is a lot higher. Actually, before we go on a side note, what was the highest number of rares you pulled in a sealed pool?
Oh, yes.
Great question. The highest number I pulled was 12.
12?
Not including my pre-release promo.
So twice as many as a normal sealed pool.
That happened twice. I opened 12.
Twice?
12 rares or mythics.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But also remember, in the play boosters, if you get one of the surveil lands, that doesn't necessarily take the place of the rare in your pack. So you're supposed to get the surveil land. So I would say I got surveil land twice, so it would have been 11, not counting that one, plus the pre-release promo.
Okay.
That's pretty ridiculous, though.
Still, that's pretty nuts.
And did you see people...
That happened twice. I mean, I always had more than 6. Somewhere between 7 and 9 was probably pretty regular.
So to build off that, how did that impact the format? Did you play against people who had like all 12 rares in their deck, or 10 rares in their deck, or did anybody at the pre-release like that you saw open like 16 rares or something ridiculous?
No, I didn't see anybody open some crazy amount.
Okay. 12 sounds crazy to me. God.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, it was wild. Between like getting foils for your deck and list cards. There was one pre-release that I opened Knight Captain of Eos from Modern Horizons. The one double white 3/3 that is played in like CEDH. That you can sack it and your opponent can't cast non-creature spells for the turn. That was a list card. Oh no, not Knight Captain of Eos.
Not Captain of Eos.
That's the wrong card.
All right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But regardless,
something like that. But it was pretty fun. There were lots of sealed pools I saw open with multiple of the same rare.
Ranger Captain of Eos.
Ranger Captain of Eos. Yeah, there you
Ranger
go.
Captain of Eos. Close. Yep.
Multiple duplicates of booster packs. You know how print runs come?
Yeah.
That was pretty clear. Like when I went to open the pack, the first 5 commons were the same in 2 packs in a row. I saw multiple sealed pools with multiple of the same rare in it. Whether that be a bad rare in sealed, like the unplayable blue case. I don't even know what it's called. It's so bad in sealed. But between that or getting the bomb. So my pool today, like I said, had 2 Niv Mizzets in it, right?
Yeah.
Granted, you could judge whether or not you want to actually play that in your sealed deck because it's 5
Yeah,
colors.
I was gonna say it's a.
But I did have a Boros deck that I splashed green to play 2, what's it called? The 5 mana that makes some Voja, the token.
Oh, Jaws of the
Tolsimir. Tolsimir. It makes a 5/5 trampler. I had 2 of those in the deck.
Oh, wow.
And it's a 3/2, so for 5 mana you get 8
that's a
power
bomb.
worth of creatures on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus the bonus
that's-
ability, so it's pretty great.
A lot of the multicolor legendary cards in this are straight bombs in limited. Not counting the ones you can't play, of course, but even the ones in the actual set are ridiculous. Yeah, there's a bunch. So maybe that sounds awesome, dude. I'm jealous. I can't wait to play the new set. It's going to be on Arena on the 6th, I believe. So very shortly, a couple days after we record this. Should we take a look at some of the cards maybe in this new set then? Jump in?
Absolutely.
Speaking
So
of,
yeah, so spoiler season's been going on for some time, so we've talked about some of the new ones. And last week, Headology and I went pretty deep on kind of the commons and uncommons from a limited perspective, which was great. But yeah, Damien, I don't think you've joined us for any of these previous pods. So let's talk about it. So from a competitive 60 card format or, perspective, what cards should we be on the lookout for that we think are gonna move the needle in various formats?
We already talked about Novice Detective. Like Carlo was just saying how ridiculous that card was in limited. So the real evaluation comes down to a lot of people think, how do you know which of these cards are going to be good and which aren't? A lot of them you can compare to other previously powerful cards in previous iterations of Standard or previous printings. So Novice Inspector here is a 1-mana 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, it's a human detective creature. When it enters the battlefield, investigate. That's it. A 1-mana 1/2 that ETBs and investigates. It's almost a carbon copy of Thraben Inspector, which was a 1-mana 1/2 that entered and investigated. It literally is the same card. Okay, I thought they might have worded things differently. No.
Yeah, it's a human soldier.
Human soldier.
The Thraben Inspector is a soldier. This one's a detective.
Human detective.
Other than that, exactly the same. Yep.
So this kind of a card is so innocuous. It's a 1-mana 1/2 white common. But this card slots into almost any white curve out deck, whether it's Esper Raffine is currently one of the best decks in Standard, loves a card like this. Curving this into Raffine or Gix is exactly what you want. A cheap creature that replaces itself. It produces a piece of cardboard. You already see cards like this, like Spyglass Siren seeing play in Standard is excellent, has flying as well. The 2 toughness is relevant here, dodging a lot of small pinging effects, but also double blocking really nicely, and holding off one toughness creatures and stuff is really nice. But really, the advantage here is low to the ground white decks love a card like this. The creature types are not great here. Human's good, but detective is not amazing. But I could see this slotting in a bunch of decks. The Boros in Pioneer, the Boros decks are going to love this. The ones that have the explosive. The 1 red sorcery that you sacrifice an artifact, it blows up into 3 1/1
demolition.
Red. Gleeful Demolition, thank you. There was one from Scars of Mirrodin, I can't remember, but same thing. Gleeful Demolition, the Boros decks are going to love a card like this. Like I said, I think Esper midrange in Standard or even Blue-White Soldiers might want this, but I'm not sure. The only issue with Esper being a 3-color deck is this is a white creature on turn 1, and when you're trying to curve this into a double black Gix on turn 3, it gets a little bit awkward. So I'm not sure you can't just jam this into a Raffine deck and swap it for something else. You're gonna have to look at the mana base and actually figure out if you can play a bunch of Gix alongside this, or Lord Skitter, or these double black 3-drops. So that's the only thing, but I really like this card. What do you guys think about Novice Inspector?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great carbon copy of Thraben Inspector. I love playing it in limited. It was an all-star. Like you said, of note, it helps crew Schooner, right? As a 1/2.
Yeah.
So that's what it's got going for it. I don't know if it's better than the 1-drop flyers like Spyglass Siren or Fairy Dream Thief that you could currently play in that 1-drop spot. Considering that you want to go like maybe Schooner into Gix or Bat into Gix and those types of decks. Currently in Standard for, decks that are like near the top, the only really mono white deck that exists is a mono white Toxic variant, if not just like Soldiers or just like a Convoke deck that already exists. It could be fine just being played as part of the Convoke deck, but then you lose that Soldier type that you might want for another reason.
Yeah, I mean, the Soldier deck has been shifting away from being a pure soldier
You're right.
for a while
It
now. Like, they
has.
took the type specific lords and things out, and so
Yeah.
You're right.
having a clue token down, so you can hold up your counter mana to prevent the board wipe. But if they don't hit it, I'll just draw a card. Okay, great.
Right.
Like, that seems good to me. So yeah, I
Yeah,
wouldn't be
it
surprised if
definitely
some
it
people try it in
definitely
that
helps provide that card draw extra that those decks need when they run out of gas to a Wrath spell, right? Whereas
Right.
the Soldiers deck had the Recruiter, right, that you have to pay mana into to try to find another creature. But it definitely works with the blue-white aggro deck that's playing the Knight Errant of Eos.
Yeah.
The 5-drop
Yes.
that convokes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's a very, I think it's a good card. I think it slots there. You know, I like the fact that it can crew. I think the crew aspect on the schooner is probably one of the best things about it in standard. If and there was a blue-white aggro deck that played like Warden of the Inner Sky, which this is another 1-drop that can tap for that.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So it provides that type of versatility in that deck too.
Yeah, I think the biggest impact is going to be in Pioneer, where the cards, like the decks, are so much more powerful in Pioneer that they can leverage that clue much more. Like I said, the explosive demolition or gleeful demolition, whatever it's called, things like that, where you can really get value. Like Thraben Inspector not being legal in Pioneer, and suddenly we've got Thraben Inspector and Pioneer. That's almost a bigger deal than it is for Standard. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Standard. You made a good point with the 1-drop that taps creatures. It also taps artifacts. So yeah, having an Office Inspector with that guy on the battlefield, you immediately get to the Warden of the Inner Sky. You get to immediately activate him and start going to town. So I think it's going to be very good. We'll see how much it impacts Standard, because right now those decks are not great. Like these low to the ground white aggro decks are not good in Standard. Blue white soldiers when it was soldiers has been okay at times, and it's put up some good results and everything, but not for a while. For a while, with all the decks playing Sunfalls, Domain just being the best deck and playing a lot of Sunfalls and Temporary Lockdowns. Temporary Lockdown is a difficult card for a lot of these decks to answer, but one of the other cards coming out in this set might actually help the blue-white soldiers deck get back on the map, but we'll get to that. So Novice Inspector, we give it an A. This is an excellent card. It's definitely going to see play in Standard and Pioneer. But what's next? What do we have to look at here?
Ooh, well, which one? Where do we want to go from here is the question, because we have all kinds of fun stuff that we could get into.
Carlo, you choose. What would you like to talk about?
Yeah, what are you feeling?
I mean, I would definitely like to talk about some cards that I think would be great improvements to the red-black deck that I've been playing in some RCQs. I've talked about playing the red-black ramp deck a couple times here on the podcast, considering we are in RCQ season, and I think it's better to get in the groove of playing one particular deck to improve upon every week.
I love it. Yeah,
agreed.
And out of the last 3 RCQs I played in, I have top-8'd 2 of them playing this deck. And I think that Karlov Manor definitely gives 2 new cards that are of consideration in this deck. Number 1 being Devious Cover-Up. That is the 5-mana Wrath spell that black now gets that it did not have before.
Deadly Cover-Up.
Deadly Cover-Up, thank you.
Yeah, Devious Cover-Up's the blue counter. That's
geez. No, we don't want to play that card. Deadly Cover-Up. 3 and double black. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you can collect evidence 6. And then you destroy all creatures. And if you paid the collect evidence cost, you can then take a card out of your opponent's graveyard and exile them all out of the deck, graveyard, and hand. And if your opponent had any of those cards in their hand, they get to draw a card for each one that you got rid of. Previously, in the red-black ramp deck, I was playing Burn Down the House. And that's because it did 5 damage to wipe the board and did 5 damage to each Planeswalker. In this same deck, I was also playing Chandra Hope's Beacon. So there would sometimes be awkward situations where I had a Chandra out, and my Chandra would die because you got to copy the spell. And you do 10 damage to Chandra, and Chandra would be dead. You'd wipe the board, but you'd be able to do it.
Same problem with Brotherhood's End. I played the same deck, and same issue. Yeah,
exactly this. And so by playing Deadly Cover-Up, you get rid of that problem. And you hit more targets. The whole reason we're playing Burn Down the House is because it killed Sheoldred on 5. And downside is it didn't kill things like Trumpeting Carnosaur with 6 toughness, or Itali with 7 toughness. So
Or
now you get to
Traxa.
absolve yourself of all of those issues and just play a straight up Wrath spell for 5. And if you can collect Evidence 6 twice, you can exile 2 cards out of the opponent's deck, or 2 different versions.
If you've got your Chandra there. Yeah.
If you got the Chandra
I like
there.
it. I think it is an upgrade. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But sorry, do you want to keep anything else?
No. I just wanted to say, that is definitely a card I'm looking to add into that deck.
Yeah, I agree. It's a definitely an upgrade. I think Burn Down the House. Also, you can't discount the 3 Devils. You win a lot of games, and especially with Chandra, there's the times where it's awkward when you want to Wrath or sweep the board, and Chandra's in play and you can't, or she dies. But then there's those other games where you make 6 Devils and they just kill the opponent. But I'm happy to trade that off for this. This card, one of the things a lot of people said right away with this card was specifically if you do collect Evidence 6, you can choose any card from your opponent's graveyard. And a lot of people are like, holy cow, you can choose a basic land and essentially go through your opponent's deck and take out all of the basic lands of that type, which can be very relevant against decks like, in Standard, we had mono white mid-range / control for a long time. There was mono blue we mentioned, before the podcast here. But that's less important. I mean, that exile is really just the icing on the cake. You're right, Favretto. I mean, just having a nice, clean Wrath in black is a huge deal, and we haven't had one in black for a long time.
Yeah.
We had Extinction Event. We had Languish. We had, all these kind of small, like -3/-3. I played the one in Standard, Drag to the Bottom or whatever, where, it was equal to the Domain, and there's another Terror Tide or whatever from the last set.
Yep.
None of these are unconditional Wraths. Even Meat Hook Massacre, which was incredible, was not an unconditional Wrath. So you're right, the black deck, now, Standard's weird right now, because we're at, 10 set Standard? Is it 11 or is it 10? I think it's 10 set now. Anyway, huge Standard, big card pool. So we've got Sunfall, Farewell, Temporary Lockdown, Depopulate. Like there's a million Wraths you could play in Standard.
No witnesses.
But almost no witnesses from the new set. But they're all white, and black has never had a sweeper like black getting a sweeper like this is a big deal. I like the red-black ramp deck. You're right, it will go in there, but there's not really a lot of other Standard decks that'll go in. My one thing I did want to mention in that black-red deck, there's a little bit of friction between this and Cruelty of Gix, because you can't really play like 8 5-drops. That's a bit much even for that deck. So because Cruelty is a huge part of that deck, and I don't know where the numbers have to end up for this to be like, maybe you play 2 of these. You're still going to have to play Brotherhood's Ends to sweep up those early, from Toxic for the aggro decks.
Oh, yeah.
But I definitely could see 1 or 2. The other spot where I really like Deadly Cover-Up is in Pioneer. So I know Nassif and even Wafo Tapa a few months back was streaming Blue-Black Control in Pioneer, and it's a really draw-go control deck, but quite good if you can kind of predict the metagame and everything. But it's never been tier 1. Blue-Black Control in Pioneer is always floating around tier 2, tier 2.5, whatever. And giving them an unconditional Wrath like this that also says, oh, that Shark Typhoon that you cycled on turn 3 or 4 or 2 or whatever, now you just have it immediately collect Evidence 6 on tap. And in Standard, that might not be a big deal, but in Pioneer, it's a really big deal. If you can strip Amalia out of your opponent's combo deck, or you strip their, Cat out of the Cat Oven deck, or you strip the Phoenixes out of the Blue-Red Phoenix deck, that is a huge blow to those decks.
Oh, yeah.
So exiling a random, anything you want, not random, but any old card from their graveyard is a big deal in Pioneer, and this plays so nicely with Shark Typhoon cycling that I think it might make Blue-Black viable as a control deck. The only reason I think that might not be true is another card that was spoiled in this set, which made the Blue-White control deck actually even better. So we'll see if Blue-Black controls these playing Pioneer. But Ham, do you want to jam this in any of your decks?
100%. I mean, pretty much all of my commander decks day one. I say pretty much all. I have way too many commander decks. Most of them have black in it, so it would not be hard to do this. And you're right. The unconditional Wrath is such a huge deal because I mean the last one that I can think of. I mean, I know there was Bantu's Last Reckoning, which wasn't even good, but you could do it.
That's old.
Even that's old at this point. Yeah, and like you mentioned, Extinction Event, like that being even or odd. It's like it's not great. Like that was best in class at the time. It was huge,
and it saw play. Oh yeah, still sees play. Yeah.
And Meathook Massacre. If I'm spending 5 mana on a Meathook Massacre, I'm only hitting -3/-3. You know, and so I think the fact that it's an unconditional sweeper. I mean, we see cards like every time Damnation gets printed, people freak out.
Oh yeah,
because it's just that we don't get that, very often in Black. And so just being a 5, honestly, this could have just been a 5 mana Damnation. And I'm still like, okay, this is still pretty good. The fact that you have that Surgical Extraction upside, sweet. Like it's just this is all gravy. Absolutely. I like this. I like it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. And another A.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
And while we're talking about red black ramp for just a moment, another card I'm excited to play in the deck is Outrageous Robbery.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah,
this card's outrageous. I don't know. You like this card?
I love this card.
Okay,
I love this card.
What are you gonna do with it?
My opinion might be a little based, and that's because I have been playing Decadent Dragon in my red-black ramp deck, and that's been my most favorite card out of that deck to play. For the expensive taste option, with expensive taste, you could exile the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck, play them at any time, look at them at any time, play lands. You can cast the spells, but you had to pay the mana for it.
In the appropriate colors, yep.
Yes, and even though it made a treasure, and I'm still likely playing Decadent Dragon in this deck because it's a solid 4/4 that you can cast then from outside the game with flying. Outrageous Robbery serves as an additional card to where, hey, I might not have enough mana to cast another Breach the Multiverse, but in the matchups that matter in Standard, such as Domain, where their deck size matters, where Rakdos kills Domain the majority of the time from breaching the multiverse, and opponents drawing 3 cards off of triple up the beanstalk that they can't stop. This card plus Chandra lets you exile double the amount of X off the top of their deck.
And Chandra's making mana to help you get that X even bigger.
Oh, yeah. And so I'm not advocating for playing this card in the main deck, but I would definitely want to jam at least 2 copies in my sideboard against Dimir midrange, against the Domain deck, any midrange strategy, really, that is a little bit slower on the end. And I think the Dimir midrange is probably the slower at all the midrange decks that exist out there currently. They're all worried about that value. And when you take their value from them, they can't answer your threats plus theirs. So they got to make that decision. What's the priority cards that they want to try to resolve? And if you're able to resolve Chandra against that deck, game over. Because they can't kill Chandra plus something else. So I definitely am jamming 2 copies of this in my sideboard for the next RCQ.
So I can respect how powerful this card is capable of being, but Breach is, let's not kid ourselves, this isn't Breach the Multiverse. And you said that. You play Breach in the main over this. We know that. So this is essentially your mini Breach, is what you're saying. It's your Breach for 5 or your Breach for 6, as opposed to going all the way to 7 and actually breaching, because even copying it with Chandra, I mean, Breach is getting 10 cards. Like, that's what you want to copy with Chandra. This, like, you're going to pay, 5 mana, mill the top 3. Now, whenever you're milling yourself and doing that, that's always better than doing it to your opponent, right? Siphon Insight, Gonti, all these cards that look at the opponent's deck, Decadent Dragon, they might seem like they're drawing 2 cards or however many cards it is, but that's not actually the case. When you're pulling them off your opponent's deck, I would say for every 2 cards you're pulling, it's worth 1 card, really. Like, the cards out of your own deck, drawing a card from your own deck is the same as looking at the top 2 and putting one in your hand from your opponent's deck. Because their cards are always going to be worse for you. Obviously, we executing your game plan or whatever it is, working in tandem with your other stuff in your deck. Their cards are always going to be worse at doing that. So it is it's not just draw X. It's like draw half of X. So if you go X is 3, it's like drawing 1.5 cards. Maybe X is 4 is like drawing 2. So for 6 mana, it's almost like drawing 2 for 6. I just feel like, again, these are rough kind of like examples I'm making here, it's not exactly going to be half, but in a lot of cases against a lot of decks, it's going to be not amazing. So I wonder, the red-black deck I played a bunch too, and it is the domain killer. You're right, right? Do we need this? Do we need another card to beat up a deck that we're already beating up? I feel like when you said it was good against mid-range, made me a little intrigued. I wonder, maybe it's good enough there, but because a lot of their stuff is cheap.
The positive side of Outrageous Robbery that Decadent Dragon doesn't have is you can spend mana of any color to cast the spells off of Outrageous Robbery. There's actually no restriction off this card. So, you know, if I'm playing red-black and I happen to hit Wandering Emperor, it's not a dead card, right? I can then just cast Wandering Emperor for 4.
Yep.
It allows me to cast Jace off of opponents' decks, whereas I would need the blue source. You know, besides playing the tri-lands, right? So, like, I think in my deck I was playing 4 Zeator's Proving Ground and 1 Xander's Lounge. So already put me up on the blue source against domain. And for domain purposes, in case I get to cast Herd Migration, like, hello, that seems great.
Oh, wait. So, you were playing off-color tri-lands just to make, what, Decadent Dragon better? So you
Oh,
could
no,
cast
I
their
was playing
stuff?
Terra Sunder in the sideboard because it's 10 times better than Extract the Truth.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
You were splashing.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, so yeah, you're right. That is a good point. So you can use any mana to cast these cards, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, you know, I'm ramping into Atraxa, or I'm ramping into Itali and Breach and Chandra. Why do I want a Wandering Emperor? You know, like, why? This is again why, like, taking their cards is like, you know, I've already got a bunch of removal. I'm gonna get some random mid-range creature. Like, I'm doing things way bigger than that. I don't know. I feel like I like these cards, but I think a lot of people are attracted to this kind of card because it's the I got you with your own thing. You know, kind of like,
totally.
Yeah.
That's
totally, and totally understand the criticism. Just, I guess, my experience in playing against these decks in paper, anyway, has been that, you know, most of the mid-range decks are only equipped to beat whatever your strategy is going to be, and not necessarily in addition to theirs.
That's true.
So if you're able to rip one of their bombs, they now all of a sudden need to pivot their game. And then also be able to handle your continued threats that you're throwing at them every turn. And it's always nice, too, even if you hit lands off of their decks, just to be able to play those lands if you miss your land drop, making sure that you're hitting your curve. There's been many a time where Decadent Dragon saved me from end step. I have three, no more lands in my hand. I tap 3. I hit 2 lands off the top of their deck. Well, now I'm not going to miss my land drop. You can also play the lands off of Outrageous Robbery. So it doesn't turn like those lands necessarily to being dead. You do get those drops every turn,
That's true.
which is nice.
And it's an instant's great. Like, I love that you can play it on the opponent's end step. But, you know, and again, like, but that's the thing, red-black, like, you know, this is nice in a control deck or something that's leaving up mana, but you're usually tapping out almost every turn in red-black. So I wonder. I want to see, I want to hear back. I want to hear from you. Give us a report maybe in a couple weeks or whatever when you've had a chance to play with it. I want to hear how well it did out of the sideboard, because I have my doubts about cards like this. They're traps to me, but.
And maybe that deck's not the dream position for it. Like, maybe.
Yeah.
But I do think this deck, or this card and cards like this, are well positioned with the way that people are building decks right now. Because people are not building synergy decks. Like, I'm not pulling Elven Well-Wishers and Priest of Titania off my opponent's deck where I have no elves.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, we're stealing just generically
stuff.
good cards. Like, I'm never mad to get a Wandering Emperor or get access to that, right? Like, it's never dead. You know, Sheldred is never dead. Atraxa, if I can get to the mana, we're going to be good. And this is going to help me find make sure I'm hitting my land drops as well. So I think you're right that a controlling deck that is holding mana open, like, if I have 3 pieces of removal in my hand and you don't give me anything to blow up, okay, great. I'm just going to cast this where X equals 3, grab your top 3 cards, and you're going to see them coming at you in the next couple of turns. I like that. I think that's a cool idea. So maybe the right home for it hasn't made itself super clear yet, but I would be surprised if this doesn't find a home.
You're right. I gotta say, if there is a time that this is going to be played in Standard, it's now, because Atraxa is the most played card in the like, it's the backbone of the deck that makes up 20% of the metagame. So it's the reason Rakdos Ramp exists. If Domain didn't exist, Rakdos Ramp wouldn't exist, because the Breaches and the Italis, all you're trying to do is take their Atraxas, right? Take their Leyline Vine, take their big swingy Nissas and all that stuff. So in a metagame like that, where there's a lot of big boom booms running around in everybody's deck, like Itali's and Atraxas, this does get better. It doesn't ramp you, so I mean, you play this on 5, you hit an Atraxa, you're like, okay, now. But like Svavretto said, sometimes you hit lands off it, sometimes it gets you there. So
and it's just fun. It's just fun to cast, to say, shout when you cast it, outrageous robbery. Yeah, and then you get to everybody else at the tournament like looks behind. Everybody's what's going on here.
Judge comes over.
Breach the Multiverse already gets its own reaction, but this has got to be something else.
What do people yell at your shop when they play Breach the Multiverse? The Breach! Like
I
what,
do.
what
I
do they
shout
yell
it.
when...
Breach the Multiverse as loud as I can. And
you're
if my
you're making a scene either way.
Own it. Like here we go. I'm ready.
I like it.
I love that you made that joke because I literally edited a video for social media earlier today where I made that joke. So thank you.
Nice.
You
know what?
Anyway, it's like
I'm a simple man. All right, these flashy rares, these outrageous robberies. They're cool looking, okay? Look at that guy. He's punching a mirror. Nobody's messing with him.
You don't mess with this guy.
But I just like the simple, basic, long goodbye type cards. Speaking of like that, those are the bread and butter of the format. So let's move on to the next card.
Absolutely.
We've got a simple 2-mana instant in the Doomblade, mana cost, 1 colorless, 1 black mana instant. This spell can't be countered. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. Simple, elegant, one of the best cards in Standard right off the bat. This card's going to see play immediately. This is not one of the best, in terms of attracts, but these are quietly the best cards in the format. Cut down is what defines what kind of small creatures can be played. Long Goodbye. I'm playing a bunch of Anoint the Affliction in my black decks, in Esper Midrange, in Esper Control, in, a bunch of these decks. And it's been awesome. Just exiling creature lands, exiling, sometimes a random Mosswood Dread Knight, or Preacher of the Schism, or Schooner. Schooner's the big one. The submerged schooner, submerged schooner?
Subterranean, I believe. Yeah.
Subterranean schooner. It is the annoying outlier that all the other removal doesn't go for the throat, doesn't hit it, cut down doesn't hit it, all these. And so I was playing Anoint, but this card, Long Goodbye, just a massive upgrade. Not being able to be countered against the blue-black tempo deck, against Esper, they play a bunch of Make Disappears and this kind of stuff, is clutch, hitting all of the creatures. Rafine, not even going to pay the ward. Bam, get out of here. Schooner, Preacher of the Schism, anything. It doesn't exile. So, you hit a Denic that comes back, because Anoint with Affliction had some, icing on that cake that this doesn't, but they're not even in the same league. This is way better. And but yeah, what do you guys think of this one? Is it going to be all over the place? I think it is, right?
I think we're all going to be happy to be able to cast this card against Rafine. 100%. It's a multi-format card for sure. I love when they do this with these uncommons like this.
Yep.
Definitely going to be playable in Pioneer, maybe Modern. But the uncounterable thing is clutch, so you don't have to worry about your card getting Make Disappeared either. It's solid removal spell. And obviously the deck it isn't great against is Domain, right? But outside of that, it kills everything else. You know?
And even in Domain, in game 1, you could still hit one of the,
Stompers.
one of the beasts if you have to. Exactly. Like,
it's not great, but it doesn't matter.
You're still siding them out, but in game
cut
1, okay, maybe.
Cut down's not good against Domain, but we're packing 3-4 cut downs in our black deck. Like, you still have to deal with everything else. Yeah.
Yep, 100%.
But the not hitting, not having to care about ward is such a big game. Not only against Rafine, like Graveyard Trespasser is still running around. Preacher has kind of subsumed that card. Now everybody's playing Preacher, but just not having to discard a card. There's a couple of cards in this new set that have ward. There's a green creature that says not connive. What is it?
Collect evidence.
Gather evidence, collect evidence X, and as a ward. There's another one that's sack a creature or something as a ward. So just not caring about ward. I think a lot of people just forget that. They think, can't be countered. It's only Make Disappear that this is good against. Maybe Spell Pierce or something. No, it just lets you ignore ward. That's massive. There's a lot of great ward creatures. Yeah. So totally agree. This is going to be a great card. 100%. See a lot of play.
even if that first line was this spell can't be countered by ward effects, I'd still play it. Like, it's the fact that it also gets caught up with actual counter spells too. Great. Like, it's fantastic.
I love these cards. And like Freddo said, these cards can see play in a bunch of formats because they're just good answers. The good answers see play all over the place. The good creatures are, deck dependent, metagame dependent, everything else, but good answers are always good almost, as long as they're cheap. So 2 mana, this is perfect.
Yeah, and the other thing I love about this is that it keys off of the mana value rather than the power toughness. Like, the reason that we're running cut down left, right, and center right now is because those cheap aggro decks are just kind of the normal thing. Well, in Esper, having cut down your hand is great if you can get it early. The moment Rafine has started to do their thing, well, now all of a sudden it's dead. Whereas if you top deck a long goodbye late in the game, their Rafine might, be a 6 power creature. You don't care. You can still hit it. I love that.
I think a lot of people aren't sure, or they haven't thought about the difference between a removal spell that hits based on power and toughness and a removal spell that hits based on casting cost. Whenever you have a choice between those two things, the removal that hits based on casting cost is always superior.
Always.
Temporary Lockdown is amazing in Pioneer and Standard because of exactly that. Fatal Push is in Modern, in every format. It's amazing because it doesn't care how big the creature is. And we know ever since Tarmogoyf was printed, 2 drops can get real big, small creatures are the ones that win the game. Ragavan, and these you gotta kill them, right? Yeah, so being able to hit anything regardless of how big it is, just based on casting cost, when power creep is pushing creatures to be more and more powerful at 3 and 2, hitting Inties and hitting Adelines and Rafines and all these things. Great, fantastic. So
and now I'm just realizing that this is going to be a 4 of and timeless for sure. Like, it's not even a consideration because you have like some of the most bananas counter spells protecting, Orcish Bowmasters, like that won the Creator Clash a few weeks back. And then we also have, like the Zoo decks running the Territorial Kavu with counterspell backup. Like, being able to answer that, A+. I think this card is just
Speaking of removal, I have a few more here, but let's take turns here for Redo. Do you want to go with the next one? Or do you want me to go? We're going back and forth.
Please,
I don't know.
Go ahead. Continue. Yeah?
No More Lies is the big one that I want to hit. And this is not a removal spell. Okay. Get it all out of your system right now. Yes, Mana Leak is back. No More Lies.
Loves counter spells, by the way.
But it's funny.
So
I don't love counter spells, but I do love Mana Leak. I have a soft spot in nostalgia for Mana Leak specifically, because that it was very formative in my early
What does
years.
this card do then, Ham? Tell us what it does. Right. What does No More Lies do?
So if you're not familiar with No More Lies, it's not Mana Leak, but it's kind of Mana Leak. So it's an instant for white-blue. Counter target spell, unless its controller pays 3. Note, there were no qualifiers about that spell. It's just a spell. If that spell is countered this way, you exile it instead of putting it in Summoner's Graveyard.
So a 2-mana counter spell that counters a spell unless they pay 3. That's essentially what we're talking about when we compare it to Mana Leak.
Mana Leak.
And a lot of people go, well, we have Make Disappear, though. Why? Like, this can't be that much better. It's just 1 extra mana they have to pay. They have to pay 3 instead of 2. Why is this better than... And Make Disappear, I can casualty later in the game, off a token, and then they have to pay 4. It's even more relevant later. You get to exile something with this. But anyway, people who say these things simply don't understand the difference that a single increment, a single tick up or down on a Magic card can make. I've made this analogy before in Magic where I talk about the dials in Magic are very chunky and they go up from 0 to 5. They don't go from 0 to 5,000 or 0 to 1,000 like they do in League of Legends, like they do in other, online, like Battle Royales, Apex Legends. They can adjust damage numbers, they can adjust DPS, they can adjust all these things very minutely. In Magic, paying 2 on top of your spell versus paying 3 is a huge difference for a ton of spells. All you have to do is envision yourself trying to curve out in a game of Magic. And when you want to go that 2-drop into, on turn 3 play a 3-drop, on turn 4 play 2 2-drops, and you just can't even play 1 2-drop, like you're cutting the opponent's game plan in less than half. You're actually cutting it like by 75%, because just that 1 extra difference is almost 2 turns in Magic in a way. It's weird. And Basically, yeah, this counterspell is incredible. So this No More Lies is suddenly going to see play in Standard, but Standard we don't really have a strong control shell right now, where this really is going to shine as Pioneer. The blue-white deck has become tier 1 after not being tier 1 for a long time, the blue-white control deck. And that deck got better because of the metagame shifting. Amalia suddenly showing up on the scene, and blue-white having a great match against Amalia is really what is putting it up there. And Temporary Lockdown doing a ton of work right now. So this is a huge pickup for them. The Exile Clause, again, in formats like Pioneer, it's so much more relevant, where you can tag a Phoenix, you tag the Cat in Cat Of, and all the other examples I was giving for the Deadly Cover-Up. Anyway, it's just an amazing card. I see Favretto nodding. What do you think?
Just to reiterate everything that you're saying, for Standard, the Exile part is very relevant, considering the amount of decks that we have, not just Rakdos Ramp, but even the Discover version, playing Cruelty of Gix to reanimate things out of yards. This matters.
Yeah.
If any of the decks are playing Tenacious Underdog anymore, exiling that card matters.
Denick.
Any relevant creature that your opponent needs to use Takanuma to get back, like the Slogurk deck, for example, is super important.
Right.
So I definitely see this card being played in Standard simply for the exile reason, even though the mana cost is harder, but we have the best mana that we've had ever in Standard, so shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, so it gets tricky. Like, I think Esper Rafine, obviously blue-black can't touch a card like this. The big drawback here and why the card looks so powerful, Mana Leak was just blue. This is white, blue to cast. One white, one blue, like Dovin's Veto. That does create a little bit of an issue in terms of resolving this early, because again, you want this on turn 2, especially when you're on the draw, to counter your opponent's 3-drop when you're on the draw is a big deal in Standard. So it will be a little interesting which decks, like Esper being 3 colors and a bunch of their, like again, you said, dark Deep Cavern Bat into Gix, or Rafine, like you really heavy black right now in these Esper decks. They are going to have to switch up their mana base to make this work, but we were talking about the Novice Detective earlier in Blue-White Soldiers, and Blue-White Soldiers used to be a much more interactive deck where they were playing Make Disappears and stuff like that, Spell Pierces. They were playing the Protect the Negotiators and all this. This could just be a card in that deck even. What do you think about Blue-White maybe playing this? Is it possible? I don't know.
I mean, Blue-White is one of those decks that can take advantage of the casualty on Make Disappear, and Protect
That's
Negotiators
fair.
obviously kind of fits that deck very nicely as well. So yeah, is it strictly better? I don't know. Like, that's the one case where I would still consider sticking with the Make Disappear. But honestly, if I'm running one of those on the ladder right now, I'm probably going to test this. Like, I'm probably going to throw 2 in and see how it works. Because I would seriously, because I think, I mean, if your board is empty, or you only, like, if you have lethal on board, and the opponent taps out taps down for a sweeper, and if you casualty, you no longer have lethal. Like, that'd be kind of, that's a fringe scenario, to be sure. Because in order to take advantage of the casualty, you do go down power on board. This doesn't have you do that. But the top requirement is 3 instead of 4. I don't know. So
we'll see.
There's a give and take there. So, but at the end of the day, as far as like pure power level goes, this is so much better than any of those Quench variants that we've seen recently. It's not even funny. Yeah. And you're right, the additional color is a notable downside. We shouldn't dismiss that completely. But honestly, right now, I think part of the reason that we've been seeing a fall off of just Azorius control kind of play in Standard is because the counter magic has been kind of lame by compared to the threats. Like, because right now the threats are all absolutely insane, and every single one of them is a must answer. We have some really good sweepers, but the problem is, by the time you're getting to your 5-mana Sunfall or your 6-mana Farewell, your opponent has counter magic up because they know you have it. And so
or Sun falling in Atraxa when they've already refilled their hand is not going to win you the game, right?
It's
Sun falling one threat. But the other knock against this card, to play devil's advocate, I mean, Cavern of Souls is still a card that sees a bunch of play in the best deck in Standard. Cavern of Souls doesn't care about this card. So, there's still ways to kind of, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure this is suddenly going to make control good enough in Standard. Lord knows I'm going to try.
Yeah,
but
I think people are going to try it. It'll be,
I think Pioneer is where it's going to shine.
100%.
It's really going to make one of the best decks absolutely a lock, maybe the best deck in Pioneer, which is a sad place to be because I know a lot of people don't like playing blue-white control mirrors. I don't even like playing blue-white control mirrors a ton. So if that's all Pioneer is, I feel kind of bad for that format and the people who play it. But hey, talk to Mark Wosewater or whatever.
I find that fascinating because I didn't enjoy blue-white control much at all. I was definitely one of those mid-range players who just rolled their eyes when their third spell got countered. I was totally that guy for many years until, believe it or not, it was commentating a pizza box, and I think it was Explorer or Historic, and blue-white control was just the thing. And like everybody brought it, and it was actually commentating a blue-white mirror that actually kind of got me to realize, like, oh, wait a minute, there's a lot of nuance here.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
This is actually really interesting. And like just having to get into it, I realized, like, actually, this is kind of neat. Maybe there's something here. And yeah, that's when I started appreciating it. And ever since then, I've been more, when people start ragging on control, like in my chat, I'm like, whoa, like, calm down, guys. Like, there's something going on over there. It's not as auto win as you think. Because I've also seen people and been the person who's just like, well, control just always wins, so I'll just play the control deck. Why am I never winning? Yeah, it happens. Anyway,
so personal preference, super important question that must be answered. Would you rather watch the control mirror as a commentator? Okay, so like pure blue-white control, like we're talking about, the deck people complain about.
The Shark Typhoon, Teferi Dominator,
yeah. Or the domain mirror.
Control mirror.
Blue-white control all day.
Yeah, domain mirror's a little bit less interesting. A lot less interesting. Control, there's a whole dance going on, but all of it is happening behind the curtain. You don't see each other's hands. You don't know. All you know is, have they made a land drop this turn? Oh, okay, they did. Shit. Okay, I need to make a land drop. Okay, I made my land drop. Okay, go. Are they going to make a land drop? Because it's all about who stops making land drops first. Then somebody starts resolving spells with multiple counter spells up, and then the dance suddenly picks up into a frenzy, and you have these big, huge turns where there's like 8 spells on the stack. Those are very sweet matches to see. Domain does not play out like that in the domain mirror.
Nope. It's like, they're going to play a card and draw 4 cards. Yep, okay, that happens. They're going to exile everything.
Everything draws so many things, and then everybody's cards deal with each other's cards, so you just keep going through your deck. It was like watching 4-color money pile mirrors in Modern back in the day. It was just,
And nobody has haste. I'm just waiting for one person to put some kind of haste enabler in their freaking deck, so there's like herd migration, and they all have haste. Now, right.
Well,
come on, guys, something.
So I will never forget in the last pizza box, the top 4 were 2 domain and 2 toxic. And they were both mirror matches, and you could see the chat erupt, voting and hoping that the toxic deck would just destroy the domain deck, just because of that much hate for the
the
domain deck.
That's really all it comes down to.
People are. I mean, Standard's in a weird time. People are tired of playing the same cards that we've been playing now for over 2 years. So. It's I get it, but we'll see. It'll change.
It's funny you mentioned Graveyard Trespasser earlier in the podcast, because the moment you did, I had one of those little like, oh, that card. Like it's just one of those cards where it's still around, and I don't see it often anymore. But when I still do, I still kind of go, oh, it's this again, because I've been doing it for years. I've been going up against
at least
that stupid.
Now we have long goodbye.
Anyway.
You can just tell that Trespasser to take a long goodbye. That's it.
Absolutely, you better believe it. Yeah.
No more lies. I really think is going to see a lot of play. Let's jump to something interesting. Okay, we talked about blue-eye control. Let's give these green mages something to chew on. Archdruid's Charm. Charm. Yes. Charms are awesome. Everybody knows charms are awesome. Everybody knows modal spells are awesome, whether they're commands or charms or whatever. They're always great. Usually, I mean, not every single one of them sees a ton of play, but for the most part, these are very powerful cards. I'm curious, actually, before I even talk about the card, do you think we're going to get a cycle of these? We have Archmage's Charm. We have Archdruid. How many arch things are there in Magic? Archangel's Charm in white?
That could totally be a thing. Yeah.
Archdevil's Charm? Archdemon's Charm in red?
Charm, that could be a thing.
What's the black one, though? Archdemon maybe for black.
Like
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. It'd be cool. Anyway, so Archdruid's Charm, that would be sweet, is green. So triple green, just like the Archmage's Charm that was in, Modern Horizons, right?
It was Modern Horizons 2, I believe. No, was that the first one? Anyway, one of those. Yep.
So green, 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 it's an instant. Choose one. Search your library for a creature or land card and reveal it. Put it onto the battlefield tapped if it's a land. Sorry, I was reading that.
I'm sorry.
Put it onto the battlefield if it's a land.
Yeah.
Otherwise, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So if it's a creature, 3 mana instant, put it in your hand. Fetch a creature. Or 3 mana instant, put a land onto the battlefield tapped. Any land. We'll come back to that. Second mode is put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It deals damage to its power to another target creature you don't control. So bite, not fight here. This is like punch. And then the last one is exile target artifact or enchantment, which is very relevant. Exile, very relevant here. The One Ring is the big one you want to exile in formats like Modern. Modern and Pioneer is where I see this card that is probably going to see play, or may see play. Getting any land, I mean, look at like, you know, in Pioneer, the Lotus Field combo deck, for example. Lotus Field, that deck would love a few more ways to just get Lotus Field onto the battlefield, instant speed. Like,
100%.
Go get a Thespian Stage, put it on the battlefield, instant speed. Go get it, you know. That kind of deck could play something like this, or even in Modern, I mean, you've got the Amulet Titan deck. I don't know if they need something like this. They already have so many ways to get lands and stuff, but that is a very powerful effect. And then again, in Modern, being able to exile an artifact is very relevant right now. I mean, again, it has been since Lord of the Rings was printed and the One Ring joined the format. So those two things together may be enough to push this card into play. What do you guys think? I don't know.
Well, Nykthos is definitely still legal in Pioneer.
Nykthos, another one, yeah. But
So,
mono green sucks though. Ugh, I don't know though.
Yeah. So Karn went bye-bye, and now the mono green deck doesn't have that. But if they still wanted to play off of a domain strategy, I mean, this card definitely fits in that deck, either in the main or the sideboard. I think it's a pretty sweet card. I think it might be a hindrance in Standard that it's triple green. There aren't very many playable green-based decks in Standard. Even the Gruul aggro is pretty red-based that exists. So I don't know that if they'd want this card, but they definitely have the mana to where they could try to play it. But there's no need to land ramp here. They're trying to kill you on turn 4 or 5. I mean, I like the card for its playability, maybe for Commander.
Okay.
I don't know if it's going to fit in any other decks. That's not knocking the card, saying the card's not good. I think the card's fine, but the triple green mana.
Triple green's a cost.
Yeah.
I think it's better than fine. I think what you nailed it. I mean, Commander getting any land, like we know how many powerful lands are out there, right? Like
I can go get my forest that has Gaia's Cradle Sharpied on it with this.
Yeah, I can get Dark Depths. Right.
Let's go.
I can get any. There's so many cards. Like you could there's a literal legacy deck that's built around how many insane lands there are in Magic, and triple green is a real cost, and green is currently the weakest color in Standard. So I didn't even mention Standard. Yeah, I don't think this is going to see any play. But mono green, you're right. It fetches Nykthos. This and one other card that we're going to touch on maybe next. There were a couple cards where some people came and said, "Hey, what do you think about this in mono green and Pioneer?" And I just thought, like, this is not good enough to put mono green on the map. Nothing can fill that Karn-sized hole in the heart of mono green. That card, that was the backbone of the deck, and I don't think green is going to be good enough, even with a couple cards that we're going to mention, this one and the next one. So we'll see, but Lotus Field decks, I mean, those kind of decks haven't been great recently in Pioneer because the other combo decks are just faster and more consistent, like the Amalia combo and stuff. They kind of pushed Lotus Field out, which is crazy. But don't forget that Lotus Field was always maybe either one of the most powerful things you could do in Pioneer, if not the most powerful thing at almost any point in Pioneer's existence since... since they went and banned a bunch of combo cards, when was that? Like a couple of years ago? 4 years ago now? When they banned Inverter, they banned Kethis, they banned Walking Ballista, they banned Underworld Breach. They basically banned combo right out of the format. And ever since then, Lotus Field is like the only combo deck that's like doing the John Travolta, like, well, all right, I'm still alive? Okay. Guess I'm the deck. And since then, it's been one of the best decks in Pioneer the whole time it's been legal, whether people realize it or not. I think a lot of people gravitate, or they are repelled by a deck like that because of its complexity and stuff. But anyway, maybe this card sees play in some of those decks. We'll see. I just thought it was a very powerful effect. Any land is kind of scary. So we'll see, but...
I think this card is beyond busted, but obviously all the land things, yes, 100% yes. But the other two modes, that's the other thing about this card. If a charm has a mode that is just universally pretty good, it's going to see play, somewhere. And in this case, we have 3 modes that are all absolute bangers. So the third mode is just an unkicked Terrace Under. People are running that on their sideboard anyway.
That's very good.
Sweet. Like that's just great. I don't think I need to explain how good that is. And chapter two, sorry, I'm thinking sagas here. Mode 2 here. You put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control, and then it bites something else. There is a card that saw almost no standard play. Well, it saw a little bit. But it kind of fell off only because a green deck was like super huge and a couple people knew how good it was. Inscription of Abundance. Do you guys remember this from Zendikar Rising?
Yeah.
The number of absolute blowouts, here, let me just pull it up real quick. The number of insane blowouts I got with this card was like, it was bonkers because it has this mode where if you kick it, you can do multiple, but target creature control fights target creature you don't control at instant speed for 2. That alone was worth the price of admission. If you had 5 mana land around, that creature could also be even larger, which is neat. But, but in
that's
this
fight,
case,
not bite. Yeah,
exactly.
This is bite.
This is a bite. And so what you can do, the way that I would use that is on defense, leave something back, declare my blockers, and then have my blocking creature fight another attacking creature that it can kill that was unblocked. So I've removed that. I've now removed the blocker. If I'm lucky, I've killed both of them. In this case, I'm almost certainly going to kill both of them because I get the counter and it's a bite. Like, I honestly think that second mode's insane.
Yeah, it's as close as green gets to. Yeah, probably. It's as close as green gets to a Doomblade, to an instant speed removal spell.
Right.
It's not that, but it's as close as green gets, which is pretty good. It's pretty good. What you said.
Yeah.
Better than a fight, so we'll see.
All in all, I think this card's bananas. I'm so stoked for it.
The other card, like leading into this, so I said, some people were asking me, what about this in mono green? Is the new Ley Line. We haven't had a Ley Line in a long time, so a lot of people are very excited about this card, Ley Line of the Guild Pact. So even though it's got a bunch of different mana symbols, they are all green if you want. 4 mana symbols. It's green-white split mana, green-blue split mana, green-black split mana, and red-green split mana. Before I move off the mana, do you think it's weird that the forest symbols are in the top left corner in 2 of those and in the bottom right in the other 2? Do you know why that is?
I'm assuming
I learned this.
idea.
I'm assuming that's just along with style
no.
for hybrid.
Yeah, it's based on the color circle.
Okay.
Apparently, if they go clockwise and they take the shortest combination of the 2. So, for example, green to white has 1 degree of separation, where white to green has like 5. So they. Okay. Anyway, but when you look at it, it's like, why did they do that? Wouldn't it be so much easier to read and parse if it was just green, all the green symbols on the top?
Yes.
Anyway, I thought it was 100%. Very strange, and I was like, oh, there's a reason why. Okay, so for anyone wondering, it's a Ley Line. So you can start with this thing on the battlefield if it's in your opening hand. You may begin the game with it on the battlefield. It's an enchantment. It says each non-land permanent you control is all colors, and lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. So, immediately people were saying, do you think this is going to see play in Domain and Standard? Because they want all the land types, right? And I said, hell no. Yeah, Bretto's shaking his head. This is not going to see play in Standard. Remember, this is a terrible card to draw late. Everybody's just like, oh, you can start with it in play on your turn 0. It's like, yeah, if you have it in your opening hand. What about all the games you draw it and it's terrible? But in Pioneer, there are enigmatic incarnation decks that play 5 color. Those decks can sacrifice this to get 5 drops, which is a big deal. That's one reason why that deck could play it. The second is just playing any basic land and having Leyline Binding up without any help is a big deal in those decks. So I wonder, specifically that one deck, nowhere else. I don't think this is suddenly going to make mono green good, even though it is 4 devotion for Nykthos. It just doesn't do anything else in mono green. The decks that want this are going to be Leyline Binding decks. So Standard, I don't think the Domain deck wants it. Nobody else is playing Leyline Binding. But in Pioneer, there are these enigmatic fires decks, or a lot of times they're just using enigmatic incarnation, not fires anymore. I've seen a couple different versions, but this might actually see play in those decks. And again, it plays it. They're playing Leyline Binding. Yeah, Enigmatic Incarnation's an enchantment that says at the beginning of your end step you can sacrifice another enchantment to go get a creature or enchantment with converted mana cost equal to 1+ whatever
Actually,
you sacrificed.
You have to search for a creature. That's what makes it even more
Oh,
interesting.
so a creature, not enchantment.
Oh yeah, you have to sacrifice a
what am I
creature or sacrifice an enchantment and grab a creature. It's a weird card,
Right.
But people have
Turns
cracked the code on
enchantments.
it and found out how to.
Oh, it's
how to
powerful.
improve it.
Yeah. I mean, with
Whenever you're doing
Leyline
any kind of-
Binding.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Whenever
Yeah.
you're doing any kind of birthing pod style effect where you can like sack a thing and then find something that's bigger, there's going to be a way to break it. Like there just is.
Yeah. So we'll see. I know some people have already said they are going to start experimenting with this card. There's also decks like the fact that each non-land permanent you control. Or no, sorry. There were like Niv Mizzet Bring to Light decks, but they haven't seen play in a long time. But anyway, those kind of decks do exist. I just wonder if one of those niche decks might actually play this card. We might see this card actually see play in these Enigmatic Incarnation decks. I don't know. We'll see if it's good enough. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's super interesting. So when I was doing the box opening stream and even the pre-release, and we would open this card, everybody would ask the question, is that great? And I would say, okay, question. In standard, because that's what they're mostly asking about, is this a do nothing card or a do everything card? Because there's actually no middle ground with it.
100%.
It has to do everything or nothing. My opinion is the same. It does nothing. Maybe it's playable in other formats. We'll see. I definitely think that it might have home in either, some type of modern deck that might want to jam it, or maybe Pioneer. Who knows? If the mono green deck is dead, this deck is not helping out that in any capacity that it was before.
No. Yeah.
You can't exactly tap outside of turn 2 Nykthos. That's if you go land Llanowar Elf with this on the battlefield. Okay, then what are you going to play Nykthos into what? Next.
Yeah, you're not getting any value off the mana types. You're not getting any
Yeah.
value off the permanents being all colors. It's just for devotion like that.
I find it so funny when people talk about the devotion deck. It's like, oh, but you can have a turn 1 Leyline Binding. It's like, and what are you removing?
Yeah, great.
Like,
But that is so. I think that might be good enough in Pioneer as long as
Sure.
you're getting value off sacking it to Enigmatic Incarnation or something.
Exactly.
Then it has additional value. But
Now the Jank brew that I'm gonna try with this, that I think a lot of people are, I'm gonna say sleeping on or maybe not recognizing with it, is the new Koth. Because Koth's ultimate is a Valakut effect that whenever a
Fire
mountain,
of Resistance, right?
Yeah, Koth Fire of Resistance. So there are a lot of modes on here. +2 being able to search out basic mountain. So you have to have some number of basic mountains in the deck if you're gonna make this work. But then you can also -3 deal damage equal to the number of mountains you control, which with that leyline down, all your lands are mountains. And then the -7, you get an emblem whenever a mountain enters the battlefield under control. This emblem deals 4 damage to any target. So we could be doing Valakut in standard with those 2 cards, theoretically. I don't think it's good. I want to make that abundantly clear. We're talking jank here.
Oh, yeah. Because I was going to say, what does that mana base look like? I have no idea.
I don't know, but I'm running Forstorm the Festivals. That's the...
put a lot of mountains? Yeah. You're probably going to have to put mountains in your deck, but then how are you casting
There will be some
this
mountains,
4 mana Leyline? I don't know.
It'll probably be Gruul. It's probably going to be a Gruul deck.
Or is it going to play like no mountains, and then you just hope to use Leyline to do the thing? I don't know. Maybe you're like a 5-color deck.
And
you're going to have to figure that out.
Because Leyline will be a 4-of, so hopefully I have it in my opener. If I don't, I could storm into it, theoretically. I don't know. It's a dumb idea, but it's one that I can't wait to try. And I think you got to be doing stuff like that. And Carlo, I love the way you put that. It either does nothing or it does everything.
Yeah,
and I think
some of the best cards are like that.
Exactly, 100%. But I think the build-around cases on this are way fewer than people think. It's easy to look at this and go, oh, it does absolutely everything. Now, if the Commander Rules Committee changes the way that hybrid mana works in Commander deck building, this is going to go from a $2 bulk, nobody gives a crap, if $2, to be completely honest, into like a $10 every multicolor EDH deck probably wants one, overnight. But because the color restriction, the color identity rule in Commander doesn't allow you to have a mana, pip in your deck that isn't of your commander's color identity. Only 5-color commanders could play this. And a lot of 5-color commander decks will want to have this because, it does the
Yeah.
fixing that, especially if you have a budget mana base. And so, Chromatic Lantern fans, yeah, great.
How are you-
Cool, we got another one. But,
How are you getting it out of your deck? That's always my question. All my commander decks play a ton of tutors because I hate like having cards in my deck that I can't get. How am I going to get to this card? Like I need this card. I just play a bunch of tutor. Is that what you're doing? You're tutoring this?
Oh
up
no,
with
I'm not. I'm not
Beseech or
tutoring
something?
squad. I want to make sure my mana base is capable of producing 4 green at a reasonable time.
Right.
And then have a bunch of like probably mana rocks that can produce mana of any color, so that when it does show up late, maybe I could still cast it out on 3 pretty consistently. But no, like in my commander decks, I don't tutor often unless. It's funny. It actually worked out nicely.
I'm a
for me.
jerk.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I waste everybody's time.
So
No,
as
not
of,
at all. Not at all. No, it's funny. It was pretty convenient. I don't have many tutors at all, except I do have one deck where I have a secret commander, and so I just put all my tutors into that deck. And I have a demonic tutor. I have a profane tutor. I don't have vampiric or any of that jazz yet. But
neither do I.
I put them into that deck specifically because I need to find my door to nothingness. If I can't find my door to nothingness, I can't beat you. So I'm gonna
Right.
go find it.
Nice.
Anyway.
So as of this moment, because we were mentioning price
yeah,
of
where are we
cards,
at?
yeah.
Leyline of the Guild Pact regular version, you could find on TCG Player for about $8 to $9
Oh, do not buy
Okay.
that.
with
do not
lots
buy that,
of
people.
listings for them.
I think a lot of people are just being ambitious and optimistic right now. That price is going
You know
dang.
what card I would purchase if I were y'all right now on TCG Player?
Which one?
You
From
You
the new set?
remember that Black Wrath spell we talked about earlier?
Yeah,
Because it's
Deadly-
less than $1.
Deadly Cover was less than $1?
Scoop them up now. Yep,
Wow.
Is that one going to go up? It's only a rare. It's not a mythic.
it's a rare.
right?
The market, that's one of those. That is one that is going to be valuable in Commander, and as a result, it is going to retain
Yeah, you're probably
value
right.
a lot longer than
That's a good point.
other cards.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's probably a safe investment. Yeah,
Well, speaking of lands,
Yes.
can we move on to the next?
absolutely.
I think we're done
I
talking
know where
about
you're going
Leyline,
with
right?
this, and I absolutely want to.
Yes.
Yes.
There's
do
a
it.
card that got spoiled. The name is Krenko's Buzz Crusher. Is that right? Krenko's Buzz Crusher. It's
He's
a
a total
two
buzzkill.
colorless,
Yep. Buzz Crusher. Yeah.
2 colorless red 4-mana artifact creature Insectopter, has flying and trample and is a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, for each player, destroy up to 1 non-basic land that player controls. For each land destroyed this way, its controller may search their library for a basic, put it onto battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So Field of Ruin, but for each player, they can you destroy up to 1. So a bunch of people have been talking about this card in the Twitterverse and stuff. And Ham, you were actually the one who brought this up before the
Yeah.
podcast. What do you want to say about this card?
So, if this was a 4/4 flying trample, when it enters the battlefield, you Field of Ruin for each opponent, or for each player. So you could theoretically, if you may do a Field of Ruin effect on target land, I would say it's perfectly fine and potentially a pretty decent card to go up against. Decks that are running, in older formats like Field of the Dead or something. Like, okay, it's a threat and it happens to answer a valuable, or in I don't know, in some kind of weird Jeskai control shell of the future, blow up those Cavernous Souls, get them out of the way, whatever the case may be. Lands are doing a lot these days. So, all right,
Yeah.
being able to remove a land, that's fine. The thing that I genuinely despise about this card, and I cannot sugarcoat this, I just hate it, is the way that they templated this. You are destroying
Yeah.
up to 1 non-basic land that player controls. You,
Right.
the controller of this, are choosing what is happening. In almost every other card in Magic that has ever been designed, where the caster or controller of the effect is choosing what it gets affected, it is targeted.
There's a word we use.
That is why target is the word.
Target. Right.
They chose
But-
not to template
Yeah.
this with target on it, and as a result, you are choosing it.
So, do you know why this card is templated the way it is?
I sure do.
Do you know there's a card? Yes, Lotus Field. So, I mean, Lotus Field being hexproof and a land means it's basically impossible to interact with it. And Wizards deliberately made the decision to make a card like this. And then later down the road, they make the decision we need an answer to this card because it's too good. Like it is just kind of too annoyingly not interactable. Like you can't interact with Lotus Field with almost anything. So without blowing up all the lands, like creatures with hexproof, at least you can wrath, you can sweep. But a land, so they made this card that is very strangely templated, basically to kill things that can't be targeted. So yeah, where does this end? I agree with you that it's stupid. But maybe before I say what I think, Carlo, what do you think about this? Yeah. I don't know. Is this do you get it?
So looking at it from a standard perspective, whether or not this card is standard playable or not, probably about 5 out of 10. One interesting interaction that it might have is to get rid of creature lands, right?
Yeah,
that is like
Restless Cottage and things.
Kind of relevant, right? Restless Cottage, Anchorage, which flies notably. The Reef, which has Death Touch, and this is just a solid 4/4 attacker.
The stats aren't bad on it. You're right. 4/4 flying, trample, like
and
the
notably also it can't be go for the throated because it's an artifact.
True.
So it does have that part going for it too. It doesn't die to a new removal spell.
Long goodbye. Yeah, I was gonna say it doesn't
long
touch
goodbye.
it.
Yep.
Yeah. So the only card that gets rid of this in the decks where it matters is like Void Rend, right, out of the Esper deck.
Or Edict
or those
Effects
handful of folks who still play
whatever.
Infernal Grasp.
There could be sure.
Solid Wrath spell. I mean, gets rid of it.
It's a decent threat.
Yeah.
But even at 4 mana, I mean, you're casting Sholdred. You're casting stuff that's really crazy powerful. So even though it does look good on paper, like how does it line up against a lot of the things other people are doing by turn 4? I wonder. Honestly, I don't think it's gonna see much play. I don't. It's just the whole discussion around this card is because of the way it's templated and everything, and because it's specifically, it's like where does this rabbit hole end? So we're gonna make things that are untargetable, and then we're gonna make things that kill things without targeting them to get around that, and then we should make something that can't be even chosen by something that doesn't target to get around that. Like it never ends. This silly like just avoid this altogether and never print something with hexproof on it again. That's what I've been saying for years. I hate that mechanic, and I hope it never comes back. Ward is just a much better version of that. So hopefully we never see a card like this again. No offense, Buzz Crusher, but it is very awkwardly worded, and obviously it's very clearly only worded like that because of specifically one card. This is like the Great Sable Stag of, for Lotus Field. Like it feels like this card that they just printed specifically to deal with one card that, a lot of people find difficult to deal with. And so kind of ridiculous. Let's just stop. Shut it down.
Yeah, and it's anyway. Yeah, it seems absolutely absurd to me. I mean, okay, if they were to try to find another workaround where this could answer Lotus Field, I mean, the only I've thought about this for a little bit, and the one templating that I could see for this is when it enters the battlefield for each player, you may have them sacrifice the non-basic land that is capable of producing the most mana among lands they control, or something like that. But then there's a counterplay. You could just start running like Cascading Cataracts, which has an ability that can produce 5. I don't know.
Right.
But you'd have to think in those kind of ways, and you'd have to consider doing stuff like there would be interplay and considerations. And when you look at it, you might think, man, that's a weird ability. Why does it have that? Or why is it worded that way? But this already has that. And this has one of those things where when I describe this to a new player and their immediate reaction is, well, that's stupid. My answer is, yeah, it is. Like, there are plenty of reasons. There are plenty of other mechanics where if somebody responds with that, I can say, well, actually, it kind of makes sense when you think about it because, and I can kind of break it down and explain why it works within context. But on this one, I got nothing. Like, this is just silly.
Just tell them it's because of one card.
It's because of one card.
It's specifically made for that one card. That's it. That's why it's worded like that. You won't see this anywhere ever again. Maybe, probably, I hope.
Oh, not.
But
there are other cards. There are other cards in the past that are templated like this, but it honestly kind of looks like a mistake when they do it.
There was literally people tagging Mark Rosewater on Twitter saying, "Is this a typo, or did you deliberately is this how it's supposed to be worded?" Like, really? Do you think? I mean, actually, you know what? Yeah, typos happen, so I don't know. But it genuinely got people to wonder. There's
one other card like this from the original Ravnica that I have played in the past. And every time I used it,
yeah.
it felt like I was cheating, which is Drake Familiar, which is a 2/1 flyer for 1 and a blue. When Drake Familiar comes into play, sacrifice it unless you return an enchantment in play to its owner's hand. And so
enchantment in play.
An enchantment in play. It's any enchantment. It's not one you control. And so if your opponent has an enchantment with hexproof on it, so like if your opponent had, I mean, at the time it didn't exist, but nowadays, if they had like a 9 lives, pick it up. Like, I don't care that it's hexproof. It doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, like, Greater Oromancy or those like enchantress
those
decks
kind of things
and stuff. Just pick it all up.
Don't matter.
Yeah.
You know, like you nice Sterling Grove you got there. I don't care. You know, and so this is. It also has that template, but this was from like 20 years ago. Like,
good recall skills there, Ham. I forgot that card existed. Yeah, that is exactly the wording. Weird.
Anyway, so but you see this kind of stuff. Well, and like when auras blink, if an aura blinks and then comes back in, you're choosing what it's coming in attached to, and that's technically not a target. So you can get around hexproof with like pacifism effects and that kind of thing. But that's like a weird fringe edge rules case.
Oh, I remember doing that with Sun Titan and Deadweight in Standard to kill Geist of Saint Traft. You would bring back the Deadweight and kill the Geist, even though the Geist had hexproof, and it was just this weird rules loophole. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Now,
it's like it doesn't feel like you should be able to, but you can. And
now people just put Geist of Saint Traft into play on turn 1 in Historic with that single white alchemy card, and
let's not sully this podcast with talk of pseudo formats, shall we? Let's keep it legit. Anyway, there's another card we should talk about.
Yeah.
I think Ham brought this one up.
Yeah.
Pick Your Poison. Another kind of weird little mini charm. It almost feels like a charm.
It does.
Ham, you wanna take us through this one?
So Pick Your Poison is a sorcery for 1 green. Each opponent sacrifices an artifact. So you choose one. Each opponent sacrifices an artifact, or each opponent sacrifices an enchantment, or each opponent sacrifices a creature with flying. Now, the first time I read this, my head immediately, like, I just defaulted like, oh, it's the Broken Wings of the set, or Atrax's Fall of the set. It's kind of a checkbox that we see on a lot of, for a lot of limited environments, and they're fine. Sometimes they're useful in certain environments, sometimes they're not, but they're almost never constructed playable. And I remember seeing Atrax's Fall in March of the Machine thinking, this is actually a better use of this effect. Maybe this will be good. Nah, not quite good enough. But with Pick Your Poison, there's one key detail here. Well, there are a couple of key details here. So now we're looking at an edict. It's not targeted. So again, we have the hexproof concept, but you as the caster are not picking what gets hit. So your hope is that there's only one thing and it's good. So, it's standard edict rules, right? Like that's...
Yeah, it could be worse. It could say each opponent sacrifices up to 1 artifact of your choice. Each opponent sacrifices up to 1 of your choice. Well, like the stupid Buzz Crusher, right? But no, this is going to be great in Modern. So sacrificing an artifact is excellent against the ring that we mentioned earlier, which is indestructible. Sacking a creature with flying is very good against one of the best decks, Murktide. Killing a Murktide is very big. It's a big deal for 1 mana against a deck that plays a bunch of counter spells and stuff. Just being able to get this through, play another thing, bait their counter, bam, hit that Murktide region for 1. Not to mention it overlaps with, ring decks. You're definitely going to see this seeing play in sideboards in Modern, almost certainly. In other formats, like Standard, not really. Like enchantment, they sack a ley line. Well, when they have 2 or 3 in play, maybe they give you your worst thing back.
Against Domain, the enchantment mode, being able to pop a ley line,
it's okay.
Or if it's late in the game, this answers the Atraxa cleanly as well. I mean, granted, they've already refilled their hands.
Or Archangel.
Or Archangel, that's true. Yep. So, okay, maybe. So maybe against Domain
matchup, in that one deck, but I think in most other decks, it's not going to be great.
It hits Rafine. It hits Fairy Mastermind.
Okay, but green's terrible.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I mean, green. I'm not like, you know what I mean. Compared to the other colors, green is the weakest color. So which decks want this? Green black midrange, right? Green black midrange is the only deck. Domain's not going to play this, right? In the mirror, they'd rather Jace. They'd rather play or Extract the Truth, or I don't know. So what's better here? Is something like this what you want in a green-black deck? Because green, there's just not a lot of green decks out there. It's Domain, and then it's maybe green-black midrange. That's it. Right. So we're saying, is this going to see play in green-black midrange's sideboard?
Is the Bant Toxic deck going to carry a couple of these? But again, the comment you made earlier about how
they don't
they don't need help dunking on Domain.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And they don't care about Atraxa. They've won the game long before Atraxa comes down.
Gain as much life as you want. I don't.
Green black, I could see it, but Extract the Truth is what they're playing now. The 2-mana Duress, take a creature artifact or creature enchantment or something else. What is it? Creature
Planeswalker.
opponent.
Planeswalker,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, creature enchantment or planeswalker, or they sack an enchantment. That is quite powerful against domain. It's what all the black decks are currently switched to, or a lot of them. So is this? I don't know. Do you play the pick your poison over this? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe? Yeah, I think we need to see a green deck pop up, but I think
that's the problem here.
There are
That's
a
what I
lot
mean.
of tools that green is getting.
Right.
And there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in this set that I think helps boost that. The problem is, just like what is always the problem when we're looking at large standards, every deck has a lot of really great tools. So sure, green has a couple of upgrades. Is it going to be enough to be viable? Probably not. Is really the bottom line. But yeah, so I think older formats, like you're saying, is where this is going to shine. Yeah.
And you know what? There is there's a Gruul aggro deck that's been kind of popping up a little bit in Standard recently, but it's basically just mono red splashing green for like Tamiyo safekeeping type stuff, like Tivar Stand. So they're not going to be green enough to maybe want this. But hey, it's one green. I mean, they could side this in. They would get value off this against Domain. They don't have access to black, so maybe this could see play. But that's a very fringe deck right now. We'll see if it continues to do anything, but basically that's the problem. Is green is just the worst color in Standard right now. There's not a lot of green decks, so it is a sweet card though.
Yeah, it's a sweet card, and a lot of those Gruul decks. I mean, I'm thinking of like the Picnic Ruiner one. Is that they're spending 4 mana, within the first few turns, or they're tapping out in the first 3 turns. And just dealing enough damage to end the game so fast. I mean, they don't want to devote slots to the deck to something like this. At least, definitely not main deck. Yeah. So interesting.
So an interesting one. And then the next couple of cards, I've only got a couple more. I promise.
Keep away,
you guys talked about the Surveil lands already, and like how they slot into.
Yeah, we have. But what are your thoughts about them? So.
They're just very good. I think they're great. They're an upgrade to the previous iterations of this, the temples and things like that, that would, ETB tapped in Scry 1. And these new Surveil lands from the new set, for those of you not aware, they've got the full 10, right? The whole entire
all 10 of them
cycle.
are in one set. Boom.
10. Most sets, they spread this out 5 and 5, but we're getting all 10. They are coming to play tapped dual lands, so 2 colors. Each of them produces 1 blue, 1 black, 1 green, 1 white, etc. And they Surveil 1 when they ETB, but really which is great. Surveil is better than Scry. There's a lot of decks that use the graveyard. Freda was talking about earlier. Putting things into your graveyard's great, especially in older formats. But the most important part, they have the land types on them. So the temples did not have the land types. These lands have forest plains and swamp island and mountain forest and whatever. So they're fetchable. They are relevant for cards that care about basic land types, of course, like you were talking about Koth earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, so these are going to be a big deal. Maybe, other decks in Modern and formats with fetch lands are probably going to play 1. I could see them playing like 1 copy of this kind of a land to get. But yeah, in Standard, these are going to be great, especially after rotation. And boy, that rotation, our mana bases in Standard are going to completely transform. And then these might see a little bit more play. But right now, I still think there are decks that are going to play 1 or 2 of these lands, just because they're, fixing, and they get you your this random little bit of value, this Surveil 1. And then, of course, there's cards that say, get a forest out of your deck, or get a whatever out of your deck. And yeah, these count for that, right? Get a plains out of your deck. Unless it says basic. If it says basic plains, of course, you're not able to fetch these. So I think these lands are great. I don't know what you guys have already said about them, but they're going to be, staples in Standard for sure.
Oh, heck yeah. Well, how many times do you fetch the Shockland and bring it in tapped anyway? If every single time you do that, if you have 1 of these in your deck, you're going to get a little extra value. And with the downside of potentially drawing a tapped land. So that is a cost. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to try to say that that's not notable. But I know, for me, I wouldn't be putting probably 1 of these in all of my Timeless decks. Because I have the fetch lands, end step. It would be a tap Shockland.
And again,
let me just make sure
graveyard.
Exactly, fill that graveyard. It gets very relevant because you have, if you care about Delirium or any of those, kind of threshold effects.
Yep.
You're having a great time. So
these are sweet.
I think
Sweet
that's
lands are
fantastic.
sweet.
Mhm.
I mean, in terms of standard playability,
Yeah.
number one, and this is something we've probably said on the cast before, eventually when Capenna rotates out of standard in September, the domain deck can still exist because of the basic land types. It would just be a tad slower because you got to play fairly with 2 basic land types instead of 3. I think that the best surveil land in standard would be the red-black one. And the reason I say the red-black one, which is Raccoose Theater, if I'm not mistaken, is because
Raucous, I think is how it's pronounced, but
Raucous, yeah.
Raucous Theater, yeah.
I'll call
Raucous
it Raccoose,
Theater.
it's fine.
Raccoose is fine. You can totally be the Raccoose Theater. The Raccoose Theater.
Oh, yeah.
All right, yes.
It sounds classy that way.
Yeah, but I like that.
But the Discover deck, the Rakdos Discover deck that utilizes Cruelty of Gix the best would probably be the home for this card. I don't know that I would play it in the Rakdos Ramp deck because that's a very different deck than this is. But it definitely has home there. So if the closest I can, if I can cast Atali on 5 with Cruelty, it's great, and this help enables that. Outside of holding maybe cut downs, there's no need that your first land has to come into play untapped in that deck. So it provides a good option for that. Also, there are the Squirming Emergence decks that care about Descend, and the Surveil lands help enable that. Squirming Emergence, by the way, used to be coming up on like the best of 1 ladder is where I'd face those types of decks a lot on Arena. But they've actually, in paper Magic, started to make a scene or make themselves present on the scene in RCQs. A little different version. Yeah,
Nice.
in fact,
Sultai, or what colors? What do these decks look like? They're Sultai.
It's a
or they're
Sultai
just
deck for the most part. Sultai for the most part. Obviously trying to cheat out like Atraxa, some play Titan of Industry.
Oh, heck yeah.
Some of these decks are playing one with the Multiverse and Portal to Phyrexia, for example. And the whole idea is to just fill your graveyard up as fast as possible. Well, the Surveil lands help you do that. In fact, there's been quite a few RCQ top 8s where Squirming Emergence have been there before. Karlov Manor, and even there was an RCQ in Illinois on Saturday that had a Squirming Emergence deck in the top 8 in a 2-slot RCQ. It surprisingly didn't play any of the Surveil lands, but I have to imagine the newer versions of this deck will find a couple copies in them. They just slot perfectly there, in my opinion. Why wouldn't you want to help enable Descend on this card that you need to get to Descend 8?
Amazing.
I mean, even Slogurk decks and things like that will also want stuff like this. So yeah, this Squirming Emergence deck looks interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen. I've seen people try and make this good. I've yet to see any of these decks be good, but this deck is obviously self-milling hard. 4 other Rogue Gaze, 3 Tempest Heart, 4 Picklock Prankster. Like, they are going all in on the self-mill, of course. So yeah, this Surveil lands seem perfect in that deck. Yeah, for sure. And they're 3 colors. So
out of curiosity, so if you're in the 3-color deck, you could very reasonably, assuming you want to stay purely in your colors, run 12 of these bad boys.
It's true.
Would you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
I don't know about that. You want to cast your spells on curve, I think.
Yeah, of course.
Well, you know, and it's so the lands are great, but it's funny. I wanted to, the last couple of cards I want to talk, or do you want to say one more thing?
Just 1 second. Remember in Ixalan, there was this card that they printed called Splunking for 3 mana, right? That ramps you. It cares about caves, but surprisingly also allows your Surveil lands to come into play untapped.
True, that is true. Spelunking is close, very close to being a very good card in standard. I want. I think it might be. Well, we'll see what happens, but yeah, maybe a deck wants this and a bunch of Surveil lands.
Every time I see somebody abuse this, my immediate thought is, "Oh man, I need to play Spelunking more," because it's
It's a
nuts.
sweet one.
Yeah,
when it just help fill the jank meter.
Exactly. Now the problem is though, if your deck is full of tap lands, the chances of actually being able to play this right on 3 is much harder. So I don't know, there's a delicate balance, and you gotta sandbag those untapped lands pretty hard if you're playing this. Anyway.
Well, 12 surveil lands is one thing. Now you can play 12 land destruction effects in standard, which is pretty spicy. The next couple cards we'll touch very briefly, and then we can move on. Is Assassin's Trophy is back in standard. Now, this card, like, when it got spoiled, people, like, were, oh my god, this is crazy. For 2 mana, like, this is a wild... So it's 1 black, 1 green instant, for those of you who don't know. Destroy target permanent an opponent controls. For 2 mana, instant speed, destroy any permanent they control. That is very powerful. The drawback, of course, when you destroy the permanent, its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So put it onto the battlefield untapped. Effectively, you're killing something and ramping your opponent. Now, this can blow up lands. So it is kind of like a Field of Ruin. You can pop a land and they have to go get a basic. It's not ideal, but at least they're not ramping. And with 4 Field of Ruin and 4 Demolition Field, I'm just saying, I'm not this depraved, but you could make a Jund land destruction deck, maybe, or just black-green, and just, you know, I don't know, with turtles bringing back fields, and I don't know what. But
have you called Strider Stone about this yet?
Oh, is he? Yeah, he does land
he's all land
things.
destruction
Yeah,
guy.
right,
Right.
He's probably loving this. But is this card good? So this card was okay back in the day, but it never really saw play as a 4 of, because again, that drawback of giving your opponent a land, this isn't Path to Exile. This isn't like quite as good as just 1 mana, bam, kill, you know, a creature. This hits anything though. So what do you guys think? Is this going to see play in Standard or Pioneer? Pioneer, this hasn't been legal now. Now it is. So is it?
It's been in Pioneer, but
has it
not
been in Pioneer?
Oh
Played.
yeah,
I can't remember. Yeah, because it's never
was in
seen
Guilds
play.
of Ravnica.
Yeah.
So just Standard then.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
you're right. Sorry,
new again
I wasn't sure.
I think the only deck that tries to play this is the green-black deck. For obvious reasons. It allows them to get around some of the restrictive removal spells that they've had to play. So not only does green-black get to play the 2 mana spell that we just went over that's uncounterable, but we've got this spell too. And that doesn't mean you're jamming 4 of this, right?
Right.
I mean, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to play, 2 of this in your main with maybe some more in the sideboard if you wanted some extra answers to something. I agree. I don't think it's always the best to ramp somebody. The plus side about having cards like Void Rend is that there is no drawback. It just costs 3 mana at instant speed. But it can't hit lands, right?
Can hit lands, yeah.
This can. So this is allowing you to, without having to play Field of Ruin or Demolition Field, be able to answer the creature lands, right?
Or Mirex or something annoying like that.
Right.
Yeah, and that's super important. Just being able to, like, play your threat on 3 and hold up, on 5 mana, play a 3 mana threat, hold up a 2 mana removal is pretty important. I would say probably the green black deck plays like 2 of these and another one on the sideboard. There's no real deck outside of Domain or Rakdos Ramp that cares about having 7+ lands out on the battlefield. That's relevant, which makes this a better spell that you're playing against a very fast, aggressive deck. Like Soldiers or Mono Red or something like this. I would say it's okay. It's not fantastic. There's clearly no other decks outside of green black that try to jam this spell. And I think that even the price point of the card speaks to that, because Assassin's Trophy used to be an $8 to $10 card before this set, and now it's less than $2 that you can buy on TCG Play or something. It's tanked it because of the reprint, but also the playability in Standard speaks to it too.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this is going to see a ton of play. It's just interesting. These kind of effects, just having the option of putting this in a deck is interesting in Standard. Like, just having this kind of, okay, if I have to, I can just lean on this to answer the enchantment or artifact. Because black, the problem is here, black already has great removal. You don't need this to kill creatures. You need this to kill the annoying non-creature threats that green and black might not be able to deal with. Terra Sunder's twice the mana. Yeah, you give them a land, but Domain's already ramping to infinite mana anyway. Like, what's one more land, Blow up your Leyline, blow up your whatever. Blow up your Cavern of Souls, Sultai Control with the new Wrath. Here we go. Here we go. Get that counter. Can we make it 4 colors for no more lies?
Oh no,
Anyway,
please.
5 color control.
but yeah,
the new.
this is an interesting one. But yeah, don't tempt
We
me.
got that ley line. Let's see if we can do it.
But Lightning Helix is the other big reprint here, and this is a big one. Lightning Helix is
yes.
pretty awesome. Lightning Helix is 1 red, 1 white, another gold instant, and it deals 3 damage to any target, and you gain 3 life. Now, this card has seen a lot of play in competitive decks.
Oh yeah.
Right now in standard, we only have really a mono red aggro deck. There are some other variants of aggro, but like, there's the Bant Toxic deck and these kind of other decks, but they won't want this. White-based aggro, like white-blue, soldiers / humans, whatever you convoke, whatever you want to call it now, but they don't have access to red. Is this good enough to make Boros a deck in standard? Favretto thinks maybe, I think, here. What do you think?
I think it opens up the possibility with the addition of some other cards to play a really fast, like Boros Burn style deck. And I'm not just talking about playing cards like Shock and this card, because Shock is back in standard. We already got Play with Fire. I think it opens up the possibility to play like a faster paced prowess deck. We have Monastery Swiftspear in standard. Another 1-drop you have Phoenix Chicks, right? There's a new 2-drop also out of Karlov Manor called Fugitive Codebreaker. It is a 2/1 prowess haste.
This guy.
That you can disguise, and its cost is reduced for each instant and sorcery in your yard. When it flips up, you get to discard your hand and draw 3. So you're replacing your hand after you've already used all your gas to try to get more burn spells. And we also have Kenra Spell Spear in standard, which flips, and the flip side has double prowess.
Right.
So, aside from that, because this is a goblin, you could also consider playing, if you want, the new Krenko, which is a 3/3 haste that pumps your goblins when you sack artifacts. You can consider playing Squee, which is a goblin, of course. We already know how good Squee is. You could still play cards like Charming Scoundrel and Godric on 2 and 3 to help either filter your draws, put those wicked rolls on things, or help get you mana as it is now for some removal spells. Make it easier for you to cast Lightning Helix because it does cast that white mana, or cost that white mana to play. And you only really need to cap out at 3 there because you're replacing all the cards in your hand.
But you're listing all these red cards. Why are we playing white then? Is it just for this? Like, that's what I mean. The only other card I thought was good enough is the 3-drop legendary, the 1/2, and for every attacking creature you get a gnome. It makes a bunch of gnomes. Ham help me out. Anampakal, thank you. That card is very powerful, and when that card got spoiled, people were like, whoa, Boros is back, baby! And then very quickly it was like, no, this is just not, it's just not fast. It dies to cut down, it dies to everything. What, 3-drop that dies to cut down? Not interested. So Anampakal is just waiting for her chance to shine here. And because otherwise you're right, red is a great deck. That 2-drop, that Ox of Agonis effect in the late game is ridiculous. Yes, absolutely. That's a great card for mono red. Why are we playing white? Is it just for Lightning Helix, or is there a Boros deck are there other white cards that are good enough right now to make it worth playing a deck that can also play Lightning Helix?
Well, there's also the Pia Nalar that's out there.
Pia Nalar's another one. Yeah. But that wants you to pack a bunch of exile draw effects in your deck, right? Like that's what the Pioneer version is doing. It's like a different thing. You got a little bit
more build around to do here. And
I think the big crux with mono red, you have to decide if you want to be a spells based mono red deck or a creature based mono red deck. And like if you're doing the Monastery Swiftspear and the prowess thing, then you need a lot more non-creature spells. So Lightning Helix and a bunch more shocks and lightning strikes. But you're more dependent on those creatures surviving. The other red deck is going to have a bunch more creatures over burn spells because they want those repeatable sources of damage to kill you. Like the red deck right now is very good. Might be the best deck in standard. It's up there with Domain. They're very good decks. So to branch into another color, it's interesting. I don't know. I honestly don't know if Lightning Helix is good enough to make red turn into Boros. I just don't know if those other cards are good enough. Like Anampakal, with cut down everywhere, and then Pia Nalar or the new Pia, it's a different like axis you want to go on with deck building. I just don't know. So it'll be interesting. Very powerful card. Will it see play? We don't know. This one I have no clue. And you guys maybe you think it will? Boros? I don't know. Where do we land on this? I land on I'm not sure.
It's not a great removal spell against a lot of the format. So like it's terrible. It's terrible against Domain. I don't ever want this card. I don't.
Mid-range.
I don't really want it against green black because it doesn't kill Preacher, but it kills cards like Glissa, which is important. But even Sentinel the Nameless City is a 3/4. Shoulder is a 4/5. So Lightning Helix doesn't do anything there either. Against Dimir, it doesn't kill Rafine. It kills the other small creatures, but nothing else.
Yeah. Esper, you mean?
Oh,
like
Esper,
against the Dimir tempo, it hits a lot of their stuff, but even there, it's like, the Preacher's the big one. The Preacher, and this is why Long Goodbye, we were singing its praises. Like, that's why Long Goodbye hitting everything, even a Schooner, this doesn't hit the Schooner, we didn't mention. Just there's a bunch of stuff that this doesn't hit. And it's funny because this card was so good, back in the day and kind of a legendary, burn spell. And then now, I think you guys might be right. I don't think it's going to see play over just the black removal's better. Like, the decks that want removal are going to play that. And this is only a burn deck wants this. Yeah.
It's funny, because I think you're talking about Lightning Helix right after talking about Assassin's Trophy, because both of them, I feel like, were all-stars back in a previous standard, and
power creep,
now,
man.
Yeah. Well, exactly. The fact that, most of the big powerful cards either have ward or have 4+ toughness. It's like, well,
everything's got big butts now, Am.
it's all, we're in a big boot
it's all
standard,
big butts.
so
we can't lie about it like that.
We cannot lie about this. We have to be honest about the size of the butts that are in standard. It's
it's all that processed food. Anyway, that's
all
I had.
Anyway,
that's all I that's all I had for new cards. So, do you guys want to go over?
There's one more card that I want to talk about because it looks again like it should be incredibly powerful and incredibly awesome, but I don't think it's going to get there, and I want to get your guys' opinion on it. War Leader's Call. Yeah. So I believe I saw a tweet about this actually. So War Leader's Call is an enchantment for 1 red-white. Creatures you control get +1/+1. So Multicolored Glorious Anthem, but wait, there's more. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, War Leader's Call deals 1 damage to each opponent. So it is literally Glorious Anthem plus Impact Tremors on 1 card for 3 mana.
Very powerful. This
that
might
should be great, right?
Is this enough to make Boros good, maybe? I don't know. You gotta go big wide.
An Impakal.
Yeah, with Adam Bakal. That's what I was going to say. And with
Adeline, Gleeful Demolition.
Keep forgetting the name. Gleeful Demolition.
I mean, so it's some kind of, maybe
gross.
It's a Boros Convoke deck that doesn't exist yet, and this is a piece of that.
Yeah, any small creature that ETBs and makes another creature token is going to be huge here. Adeline would be busted with this. I mean, there's a bunch of white cards that produce like Resolute Reinforcements is already good. Rabble, okay, now we're getting a little high up there on the curve.
Let's bring it back,
everybody.
Let's dream big.
Like, the fact that this is 3 means this is still fitting into the curve of an aggro deck. 5 mana spells, I don't know, maybe. But I know what you're saying. You could go crazy with the.
Let's get nuts.
Yeah,
but that's what it would be, getting nuts.
The whole tension with aggro decks playing aggro cards, like, even though this pumps your team, there's a lot of sweepers running around. When you play this, it doesn't affect the board. If you have a board, it affects it, but it doesn't put anything on the board that deals damage. It doesn't deal damage to your opponent itself. So these kind of effects, you really have to not put very many in your deck if you're playing a red deck. So a red-white aggro deck, like, how, you play, you can't play 4 of these. I mean, they stack nicely. They are busted in multiples, but we've seen other, oh man, there was a 3 mana red enchantment that said mobilized infantry or something like
Mechanized
that.
warfare?
It was mechanized warfare. Okay, thank you. That did something similar where it was like, keying off your creatures and stuff, or artifacts, but it itself not doing anything. I remember so many people trying this card, and I just remember going, this card's bad. That card is not doing it. They top deck that instead of a burn spell or a haste creature or whatever, and I win those games. Whereas if this was a body, any body, they would have won the game because I didn't have another removal spell. So those kind of Glorious Anthem effects are really interesting. I wonder if it does see play, it's such a tricky kind of number to land on. How many of these do I want? You want it in every game, but it almost feels like a win more card sometimes, where it's like, you need, you already need a board, or you need to have some good stuff in hand, or an Adeline, or an Animpak. Doesn't Animpakal just win the game, or Adeline? These cards just win the game if they don't get
100%.
answered.
Yeah.
So, however, +1/+1, at least you play your Adeline, and it doesn't die to cut down, right?
There you
I
go.
mean,
Yeah.
Animpakal does still though.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that, but so it'll be interesting. That you're right.
Something
Could be
something to try, but yeah, I think all of these points are really solid. I think anthems are tricky, right?
Yeah.
Because and when you're dealing with any kind of anthems in standard right now, the gold standard is still Wedding Announcement, and the reason Wedding Announcement is so much better than a traditional Glorious Anthem is because, to your point, the turn it drops, it is either drawing you a card or it is giving you a body.
Yeah.
And you're doing that first.
And imagine you have your 7 cards, it's turn 3, and you have Wedding Announcement in this. You're never playing this. You're always, in almost every match, you're going to be playing that Wedding Announcement every single time. Yep. That's what I mean about win more. This doesn't do anything unless you already have. So we'll see. It could still be good enough, but there's so many other ways to pump. Wedding Announcement might be the best, but there's the Virtue of Loyalty, getting flipped and pumping your team. There's Invasion of Gobakhan, which flips and pumps your team. Like, there's a bunch of ways that you actually already have to pump your team that also put a body on the battlefield, like Virtue, or that take their card, etc. with Invasion of Gobakhan. I'm not as big a fan of Invasion of Gobakhan, but I'm just saying there are ways that we can pump teams still in standard. So it'll be interesting. Maybe.
Yeah, how much value are we getting off Impact Tremors? I think that's what really counts there. Because I mean, if I play out War Leader's Call on 3 and then like O'Hara Oxenil, the red god from Lost Caverns on 4, that's fun, right? Because then then it enters the battlefield. It is pumped because of War Leader's Call and therefore deals 5 damage on the Impact Tremor. I mean, that's kind of fun.
Oh, you know what? What about that weird Obnixilis from Aftermath? That one also keys off a 1 damage thing. O'Hara Oxenil seems like a great one.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, that Obnixilis, there was like an infinite combo with that guy. Yeah, him and all will be one or whatever. Like an infinite. So I wonder if he does what he does with this. I have to reread the card, but there's some interesting niche things going on, right? It does 1 to them.
Whenever one or more opponents each lose exactly 1 life, you put a counter on it and do the thing.
Okay,
well, so if O'Hara Oxenil's on board, then all of a sudden it's not working. If it's just the Impact Tremor effect, and it is truly dealing 1, then Obnixilis is triggering. Fun fact, if your opponent has a pain land for mana, Obnixilis triggers. It's kind of fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. Interesting. Anyway, well, that brings us to Standard. How do you guys feel about Standard? I know Favretto's been playing a bunch of Standard recently, or I don't know. I haven't played in like a week and a half or 2 weeks now. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I've been playing it. We're in RCQ season. It's been interesting seeing the different decks being played in paper versus arena. Also interesting because we just had the standard metagame challenge not too long ago. And I would say I've played more against the actual metagame on the ladder versus that challenge. So the challenge does no help for prepping for the tournaments. Just FYI.
Challenges are weird.
I think the standard metagame challenge, people are all trying to legit try their brews against the metagame in it. So you're running into things that aren't maybe going to be seen at a Paper Magic tournament or something. So, I mean, just my experience, been playing against a wide variety of the metagame. Like I said, that first RCQ and second RCQ, a lot of people were on Domain. I would say maybe like 20% of the room each tournament. Definitely in the second RCQ, so the week after the second week of the season, lots of people were bringing Bant Toxic because they're like, I am not losing to Domain here. And here's me having a good matchup against both of them, and I'm like, this is great.
What were you playing? Sorry,
playing Red Black Ramp in that second one.
Oh, the Red Black, yes, of course.
Yeah,
okay.
and so I'm like, this is great. I will play against these decks either way.
Yeah,
my worst matchup. My worst matchup has either been the Dimir midrange or Esper midrange. I think that's the hardest matchup for the Rakdos Ramp deck.
Sure.
In some capacity. Those decks, I haven't seen a whole lot of Esper. I've been seeing more of Dimir mid-range in paper than Esper.
I think Dimir has
more.
Sorry, it has a better matchup against Domain. I think that's why you're seeing more Dimir.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And I've seen a lot of people who were playing green-black way more than you see on Arena. I secretly think green-black is the best deck in Standard. It's the best conversion rates via, getting into top 8s and those decks doing well.
That's a bold claim, but I like it.
People are scared of Glissa. Glissa is a powerhouse of a Magic card.
So good.
It hits so many things. It attacks through many things. It's infinitely blocking. Obviously, that deck is weak to sweepers, but it has the creature lands for post Sunfall. So Restless Cottage, for example, which is a fantastic card, and that card hits on all points. Me and a friend were having a discussion of whether or not Deep Cavern Bats belongs in green-black. And it seemed as though it doesn't, because people are gunning for it. That it doesn't. Wow. They're just better cards to play. And I think even having better removal spells in the new Uncounterable one makes cards like Deep Cavern Bat worse. Like, you have to waste a piece of removal spell on it to get your other removal spell back or your threat. But I think Deep Cavern Bat is not really good in the Black X decks mirror matches at all. I don't think I want that card.
Interesting. In the mirror, yeah.
Any Black X mid-range deck mirror. I don't want Deep Cavern Bat. It's like the weakest card in the deck. It either can't block something late game, or it trades with another one, and then your opponent gets the card back that you took away instead of playing a hard discard spell. I think
Pilfer would be strictly better in that, right?
And that's exactly the change I would make. And in fact, I started playing Pilfer in the red-black ramp deck for this reason. It's just a better discard spell. It's better than Duress. There's not many matches that you actually want Duress instead of Pilfer right now.
Everybody's creature-based right now. Yeah, for sure.
So go ahead.
I think I like what you're saying with green-black. So, my stance on it is basically, yes, Domain was the best deck, quote-unquote, and has the biggest share of the metagame. So we see the metagame flop over and try and just all these decks bend over backwards to beat Domain. We see the rise of Bant Toxic. We see the rise of Mono Red. We see Esper transform into a leaner, more streamlined, low-to-the-ground Dimir version. All these decks are beating up on Domain. So when now the metagame consists of a bunch of aggro decks and tempo decks that are low to the ground, suddenly I think green-black does make a lot of sense, because green-black does have the reason to play green-black, I think, is if everybody in the room is playing mono red, Dimir tempo, and Bant Toxic and these kind of decks, because that mid-range traditionally chews up and spits out these low to the ground aggro decks. The problem is, it still has a bad matchup against Domain, and what you're saying is Domain is still making up 20% of the metagame. So how are you making green-black good enough to make, you're good against the decks that are beating Domain, but you're still not great against the actual Domain deck. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, so a friend and I were brewing and trying to fit a little bit of blue into the Golgari mid-range deck for Tidebinder. And Disdainful Stroke helps improve the matchup against Domain. Your mana gets worse,
right?
But you can play cards like Dark Slick Shore, obviously. You can play Shipwreck Marsh. You can play maybe
Green Blue Land,
the Pain Land, Underground River.
To
where you still aren't sacrificed. Yep. You could play the creature land, but then you're playing another come into play tapped land. You could try to play them, but that's I think the important part is to still not mess up your black sources that you have, which it doesn't do, and at the same time not taking away from the green sources. You can do that by playing either the Marsh or Underground River as your blue sources, and either playing Tidebinder in the main, like 1 or 2, or just playing them all on the sideboard with the counter spells to help improve the Domain matchup.
Or Jace. I mean, I still think D-Stroke, because they do play caverns and stuff, but really the thing that's beating green-black is Herd Migration. I don't think they can ever beat that card, right? If Domain resolves a Herd Migration, you just don't have sweepers in that deck. You're just getting you're cold to that, right?
Well,
and
that's
also
where
counter Sunfall
right?
too, so...
Yeah.
And the Wraths are good against you,
Well, all of a sudden, Deadly Cover-Up becomes a slam dunk, because, okay, I can wipe your entire board, and you're not resolving a Herd Migration on me for the rest of this game.
Them.
And so
Maybe,
all of a sudden, that
a 5-mana Wrath.
I mean,
it's possible.
not amazing, but it's
Yeah.
it could be could be sideboard tech there that could be useful. I don't know.
But
Yeah.
I do like, so D-stroke for the non-creature, like for Nissa and Herd Migration, maybe I could see it, because normally like D-stroke just it doesn't hit
And
the Atraxis,
Sunfall
doesn't
and
hit the
Leyline
Angel.
Binding.
Yeah.
And Sunfall, sure, because if that's what you're trying to, because I was gonna say you could touch blue and then just jam Jace and just because I guess you're playing Terra Sunder and stuff as well, right? You have ways to blow up their ley lines.
Yeah.
And I found that was a way. I've been the last. Like I was playing Explorer a bunch, and then I was playing Cube Draft and all this stuff I haven't played. But the last time I played Standard, I was jamming Esper Control with the same idea as like, you're saying Green-Black is really good right now, basically because it's really good against the decks that are popping up to beat Domain. I felt like Esper Control was in the same boat where I'm playing a ton of removal, 4 cutdowns, a bunch of go over there, all these other things, and sweepers, and temporary lockdowns, and blah, blah, blah. And I just destroyed all these like low to the ground aggro decks. Didn't lose once against Mono Red and all these other things, and you got 4 knockout blow. And then the trick is, can you make that deck that's beating up aggro be good enough against Domain? So I was playing, Jaces and Tidebinders and all these things. So I guess that's Green-Black's, sticking point. So maybe touching blue, maybe that's the answer. Interesting. So Standard's in a great place right now. Do you think, this is almost impossible question to answer, but do you think we'll see a new archetype pop up? A lot of these cards are going to slot into his existing archetypes. We know that. Things like Long Goodbye and, No More Lies. Maybe No More Lies makes blue-based control good again. That might be the only one, but
I think a more controlling version of Esper could step up.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's been close for a long time, and it's kind of come and gone in popularity, but it hasn't really stuck yet. A couple of tweaks might be all it takes to really step up. I mean, it's a possibility.
My big problem with Control is we still lack a really good finisher. There is no way to just close the game quickly. I was going to try a Breach the Multiverse on the top end, and it was just like, but we're not playing anything to breach back. Like, Breach is only good when you're bringing your own stuff back, and when you have an abundance of stuff in both graveyards to hit.
Right.
And just only hitting, like, their graveyard and praying, like, that's not good enough. But Kaya, like, I was messing with 7-mana Kaya, and she's okay. Like, she's very powerful against, Domain and exiling a ley line and doing the,
Sure.
But she's very expensive and very, clunky. And like, so, that's the big problem, I think, for Control. For me, is just, you need a win con, and especially in real life, like what Favretto was saying was really interesting. We're seeing the standard metagame diverge, where the digital metagame is totally different than the IRL in real life metagame. And a big part of this is because of the card availability, card prices, things like Standard not being a format for a while. This 3-year rotation is throwing everything to the flux. There's a lot of factors here. It's very fascinating to see metagames diverge.
And the conversation in terms of card availability, right, for paper, isn't whether or not you can get your hands on like rares and mythics. It's actually getting a hand on the commons and uncommons.
Yeah, the uncommons.
Lots of stores just don't have the uncommon and commons of the older set. So like, it's hard. It was hard for people. Imagine not being able to show up to an LGS and say, "Do you have this card that I can buy?" And then the LGS is like, "No." Well, this person's come to buy like 2 different cards or 3 different cards of their deck, and the LGS just doesn't have stock, right? That's pretty common here in the Northeast. Okay, I can only speak for these stores that I've been going to. And if you order anything off TCG Player, and this is not a knock on TCG Player or its system, you gotta wait the full like 2+ weeks for something to arrive in the mail to you, because of the way TCG Player Direct works. Or if you order from a store, like you're waiting 2 to 3 weeks for the cards to arrive.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to play, you can't pivot a deck week to week in Paper Magic like you used to be able to, unless you already had that stock of cards yourself. And now those cards are at a premium. So the one store I went to last week, they had cut downs in a binder for $3, and then here they have a binder full of like 20 cut downs.
Yeah.
Now, would I pay $3 for a cut down? The answer is, if I need it for the deck, yeah. I mean, that's that whole conversation on like the vendors at like DreamHack and Magicon actually having cards for people to buy. I mean, I'll tell you, not this past year, but the year before, when I went with my friend to DreamHack, qualified for the RC, brand new set just dropped. It was Brothers War. Nobody had Obliterating Bolt or the 2-mana red spell that did 4. at the time. Nobody had standard commons and uncommons because that was really one of the first big events post-COVID, post-pandemic.
Sure.
So the stores just weren't carrying them, and they weren't opening up sealed product because it was better to keep those products sealed for them to sell than to open up draft packs. And that was a whole big problem with draft and set booster packs, right? What does a store open to get stock of? Because most LGSs opened up some amount of product.
Consider. Oh, was there anything else?
I was just going to say that's the problem with card availability right now.
Yeah.
And you legit can go sell to a vendor at a big event like a bunch of these commons and uncommons and probably get a pretty penny because they're going to charge $3 for those cards.
I mean, it's Slime Against Humanity is kind of a hilarious, these kind of Nazgul, these uncommons are ridiculous when they allow more than, you get those kind of things. But in general, what you're saying is true. Uncommons are getting opened less. There's a lot fewer big box stores opening a lot of product. That's another issue. I know a few shop owners who have talked to me about this stuff, and they, Star City Games and some of these big sites, Card Kingdom, they had a separate company that would essentially open a ton of product for them to sell because it was just so much work and time consuming. You can imagine the volume of how many boxes they open. And they got rid of a couple of these companies. This was Dominaria. Whenever Sholdred came out, that was when we saw a big dip, and that's partially why Sholdred was so expensive. Like, it's a great card and everything, but there was also very little of that set open compared to the previous sets because there had been this big shift behind the scenes with distributors and how these big box stores were opening product. But also, I was going to say the play boosters are going to change this even more because people are not buying as many boxes of Magic cards in general now that the price has gone up. I know shop owners I've talked to are saying boxes of play boosters are not selling anywhere near the numbers they were selling of draft boosters and set boosters when players, had a choice, and a lot of players would go with the cheaper option. Now they don't have a choice, and a lot of players are just not buying, meaning cards aren't getting opened, meaning prices are going up. And it's like a couple of weeks ago, Gix was $40. What? Gix, which is seeing play only recently and only in
Nobody
like one
opened
deck.
Brothers War.
But yeah, those sets, exactly. And now that they're old enough that stores don't even have boxes of them anymore. It's like, and who wants to open a box of cards that's going to rotate in a few months? Like, it's compiling. This issue is getting to be ridiculous. Standards kind of in a weird place.
Yeah, well, Brothers War actually isn't going to be rotating, but even so, like, if you don't hit Gix, what cards out of that set are you excited for?
Right.
Like, Weekstone maybe, but there's a
for
lot of misses in that set.
The older sets that will be rotating, like New Capenna. New Capenna has Knockout Blow. How many decks are playing Knockout Blow to deal with Mono Red? Oh my God. Right? And that's not common in that set. Yep. Yeah. And same thing can be said for playing cards that might be from Kamigawa. I mean, that will be rotating, and that set has 3 banned cards from Standard in it, so people already aren't buying it for that reason. It also coincidentally has Wandering Emperor, so
it's so funny because, and I really love that you brought that up, because as somebody who doesn't play paper tournaments, at least not yet, I don't think of it that way, because I pivot my decks on Arena all the time. We all do, right? It's like, okay, I've got 4 go for the throats in this one. I want to bring in some Sheldred's Edicts, and maybe we should have, some Obliterating Bolts or some Ossifications, depending on whatever colors we're in, and you modify. Do we want to go 2 of these? Do we want to go up to 4 of these? Do we want to, and you do that kind of stuff on the fly all the time. But
you nailed it. That's another factor. Arena is another factor here, a big factor. Less players are playing Standard, partially because Arena is just easier. And after the pandemic, Standard, taking that massive blow, a lot of players are just like, I'm not going back to that. I haven't. I used to have Standard decks that I would keep up week to week to week, like with the metagame. Then the pandemic happened. I sold most of my collection, but even now getting back into it, like now I'm entrenched on Arena enough that I don't need to do that, I'll rent a deck and go play the PTQ or RCQ, whatever.
The other side of that I do want to point out, though, I want to not just dogpile on Arena, because yes, that we can. But I was of a position where I never played Standard, and I have no intention of. I did not ever have any intention of playing Standard in paper. The idea of investing that much time and that much money into something that I know was going to devalue and stop existing seemed like such a terrible investment to me that I would never, ever do it. And then Arena showed up. I was like, oh, great. This is a perfect platform for me to do it. And now I absolutely have completely fallen in love with it. And I really want to go. It's the same reason I can play guitar. I just fell in love with Guitar Hero 2. And I was like, what's the real thing like? Let's give it a shot. Same deal.
Awesome.
You know, and so Arena is a great onboarding tool for people who are interested in this competitive environment. But you're absolutely right. The timing and such, like, it is a competitor to the paper scene.
Not that it's necessarily a counterpoint. For the first time with this standard RCQ season, I have seen more people at an RCQ than even when it was Pioneer and Modern. And I've only been to a couple Modern RCQs, and they were very low attendance. The first RCQ of the season I went to had 60 players at it. They couldn't even get 30 people for they couldn't even get 30 people for Modern at the same store. And so and so I was like, wow, I expected to show up to an RCQ with not a lot of people.
Sure.
But people wanted to show up and play standard. And I'll never forget, this will always resonate with me now, is I talked to an opponent in the second RCQ I went to that also had, I don't know, it was like 40 some people at it. And the deck that they were playing, and you would likely have seen this on the Arena ladder, is the blue-white deck that mills itself to Teresian Mindbreaker you.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Okay. And I recognize this deck as a deck I've played on Arena quite often, right, on the ladder. And my friends and everybody around me are like, what is this deck? And I was like, you've not seen this deck on Arena? And they would say, oh, maybe like in Best of One. No, this guy was playing and I knew exactly how to play against the deck because I've played against it on Arena.
I love that.
So here's this player, though, and I talked with him for a long time after. And I was like, have you been playing Standard long? And they said, no, I've never played Standard in paper before. I've never played Magic in paper. I bought the cards of the deck that I play on Arena. And I wanted to come try it out at some RCQs this season.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what is supposed to be happening now.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
and you're
take the players who play Arena and bring them into the fold in paper Magic. And so, like, that'll be with me forever now because I'm like, wow, the system worked for this person, right?
It happens.
Yes. And I've had lots of conversation with people, you know, who play like Magic Online versus Arena and how the metagames are different there, you know, and something, you know, I can speak to the metagame definitely being different from Magic Online to Arena because there'll be some decks that like win challenges or go 5-0 in leagues that I've never seen on Arena at all. And I'm like, how is this so different? Because those decks you don't see in paper Magic at the RCQ either. So why is X, Y, and Z not connecting somehow here?
Well,
and before, you know, traditionally you'd be able to follow the metagame week to week to week because in the past we had tournament series where this would matter, right?
Yeah.
Like there would always be
Star
a rock,
City
paper,
games.
scissors of standard. And this deck beats this, which beats this, and so on and so forth. And you either played rock, paper, scissors, or you played the rogue deck to try to beat them all, right? And I feel like Standard is at a position where, because it's extended now, and there are more sets in Standard, your rock, paper, scissors aren't deck specific. They are just archetype specific. You got mid-range, right? You've got ramp, and you have aggro. Yeah. There's no control deck that exists in that rock, paper, scissors, in my mind. That's not knocking control decks for being bad or good. Just those are the three pillars of Standard right now.
They're bad. No, that's because they're bad in Standard. No, that's why. Don't they knock them? They're bad.
But so many different decks exist within those three pillars, unlike any other Standard format I've ever seen. And so taking that and seeing paper RCQs in my region, it's indicative of that metagame. You have so many people on Domain, which classifies as ramp, right? So many people who are on Toxic, which is classifying as aggro. And then you have the mid-range bros that are just showing up with Black X mid-range and seeing how they can do. You know, and that's fine. Whoever can get the most bang for your buck, I guess. But you also have all of these, like two of this deck. So you won't see like outside of Domain and Toxic at this point,
Yeah.
10% of the field is this deck. 10 out of 50 decks are this. It just doesn't
No.
exist. It's all over the place because
Yeah.
Standard is healthy, right?
Yeah, that's yeah. Yeah, that's true, but there's a couple of distinctions here. So I think you're right. Sometimes people don't get why there's such a disconnect between Arena ladder and the like MTGO challenges, for example. I mean, I think this is the problem with Arena. You have to remember, Arena is not the Arena ladder is not competitive. It's not a ranked ladder the way other games have a ranked ladder. It's not the ELO system. It's all over the place. There is no like ask 5 different people in 5 different time zones and regions what the metagame is on Arena, and you'll get 5 different answers. It depends what time you're playing. It depends what region you're in. You know, there's a whole bunch of factors there.
And there's MMR and all
Magic,
kinds of, and all
yeah,
kinds
we
of
don't.
stuff. The matchmaker's a whole other thing.
A tournament is a whole, like, it's a self-contained event that everybody knows is going to happen. Like on MTGO challenges, you're going to get people from all over the place connecting from different time zones to play in that one tournament. When there's prizes on the line, big prizes, Magic Arena, like the ladder, people get to Mythic and then they just play whatever goofy nonsense. Like the Mythic rank means nothing. It's a meme at this point. Everybody knows this, but yeah.
What Arena should do to fix that problem, and I don't know why they don't. There literally should be an Arena open every weekend where you got to pay to enter. And that publish results of winning deck lists of the Arena
That's what I'm talking about.
And
we know they're not allergic to all the money that would bring in.
No,
come on,
it
guys.
wouldn't cost them anything, right? So that way you get to feed that competitive spirit every week. You had results from all of those events, what decks were winning the Open.
That would be awesome. Well, if they gave data and stuff, but I'm sure they would, because again, I don't know if it would be run through MTG Melee or something. Again, that's where we get all our results from. Is Magic Online? They put the results up or whatever of the challenges, the premier events, the whatever showcase challenges and all that. But other than that, it's third-party sources. Like it drives me crazy when somebody comes into my channel and says, oh, this card isn't seeing play, or the metagame is whatever. I was playing the Timeless Challenge on Friday, and somebody was like, oh yeah, that blue-black control deck is like 2 weeks old, the meta's shifted. And I'm like, the meta's shifted? What exactly is the meta? Where do you think you're... Well, MTGA Zone put out an article. Whoa. MTGA Zone and MTG Goldfish, they get their info... They're just giving you whatever they've got. They're scraping the data from Untapped and from Cardboard Live and these apps where you have to download and run it on your computer for them to get data. You're talking less than 5% of I would say less than 2% of the player base uses those apps. The vast majority of people don't use those apps, so the data is flawed. That does not give you a good idea of the metagame. The reality is we don't know what the metagame is, but you're absolutely right. I would love to see a weekly challenge, just like the MTGO challenges. That would you would see the metagame coalesce immediately, and Teresian Mindbreaker, homie, sorry, but those decks just would not, like, they would never be there, you know? I know what you're saying. I agree Standard is healthy right now and everything else, but this is the nature of competitive Magic. If there were a tournament every week, it would be the same, like, 5 archetypes that make up the top. 20%, 11%, 5%, and then at the bottom, other. That other category would be, less than 1%.
I love seeing the other category.
I know.
When it's always greater than, like, the top 2 decks percentage and everybody else is other, I'm like, yes. Like, I want to see this in every event.
But this is why when you look at Historic or something, they'll put out a random infographic and it'll be other, like 30%. It's like, because there are no tournaments. This is why when other is big, it's because there is no competitive play. There's no reason for competitive players to break the format. It's very interesting seeing what's happening in Standard as the competitive community turns their eye to it and we see the format kind of contract. But again, that's only in real life. The Arena doesn't mirror that at all because there are no RCQs on Arena. There is no challenges even. So even
why
MTGO,
isn't there?
That's a good question. I have no idea. I would love to see
why
more.
are there no RCQs on Arena? There's the system that they have to go ahead and get you to the play-in, right? Which is either you pay the play-in points or you come in the top 250, which is ridiculous because they still haven't fixed the ladder. That needs to be divided. We can't have 5 constructed formats in one ladder.
Yes.
The fact that somebody farming new players
Timeless is competitive. Why? Or Alchemy. No.
Well, but why aren't there regular RCQs on Arena? Like, if you qualify via Arena, you're buying the paper cards to get to the tournament. right?
Why don't they take the competitive like path to the Pro Tour, cut it off of the ladder completely, have a weekly, like you're saying, weekly open events with a cash entry that gets you play-in points, that can get you an opportunity to make the Pro Tour, and tie the ladder just to in-game gems and packs and stuff.
Listen,
like,
Atlanta had 1,300 people playing in the main event, for Pioneer.
Huge.
Because of so many RCQs, so many last chance qualifiers. I think they fired like 60 RCQ, what were they?
Day before.
32-person events the day before when I was there. I was watching it all happen.
Yikes.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
But 1,300 people and then playing a long 10-round tournament for day one is grueling. Yeah. That's a whole other conversation,
I've
right?
done it. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But like, why can't we just have the ability to qualify for RC? I've been at multiple RCQs where people are playing, they're getting to the top, whatever. They are not going for the invite. They're just there to play competitive Magic for cash or cards or whatever. Yeah. And they're conceding so they don't get the invite. So that way they get more prize. So they can keep
playing RCQs.
So they can keep playing RCQs to do the system. Here's little old me.
I've heard that
big old me, let's be honest. Go into an RCQ and trying with my little dinos, trying to qualify for this tournament. Just give me an arena equivalent, and listen, play them on the weekday too, not even on the weekend. Put them on the weekday so I can go to both tournaments, right?
Yeah.
If it costs WotC nothing to do that, but run the event, collect the dollars, have the RC invite. All that gets you is the badge to get into the event. It's not like they're paying you anything additional. I don't need... You're giving me packs on Arena. It's digital product, right?
So... I agree.
It literally
I agree.
Nothing. Yes.
As an aside, I love how Favretto paints himself as this. It's just little old me with my little dinos. He's ramping into a tally. Oh, it's just my little dinos.
Just my little dinos.
Watch out.
Anyway, I think one of the reasons that we might not, like, they are loath to do that is because it does hurt local game stores. RCQs are one of the big ways to get a lot of people into your store, to up those prices, to raise that tournament entry, to do a real tournament. This isn't F&M. It's not $5 whatever or store championship. This is, you got to buy in, you're going to be, and so I don't know, maybe like Arena's already done a number on a lot of standard. Like you said, the standard RCQ had 60 people, and Modern, they struggle to get 30. Everything and I'm not doubting you at all, but it's an incredible flip-flop considering for, I don't know, 2 years, standards not even firing. Every shop owner I talked to said they can't even get a regular tournament to fire, let alone an RCQ. Now, RCQs are more desirable, like a higher level tournament with stakes, with real invites and stuff on the line. That's going to attract a lot more people. I'm not surprised, but the regular event standards just not firing. So I find it very interesting.
And also,
big RCQ
with the October, with the latter part of the RCQs that will happen in the fall, where Star City Games now is the host rather than DreamHack.
Big news,
right?
Yeah.
Which, hey, regional championship Valley Forge Casino is probably on its way because that's what it is around here. The change the rules to where if you win an RCQ, you can't play in future ones. They took that away.
Yeah.
So if you win an RCQ, you can keep playing in them for the season.
And winning them, what happens with the invites? How do you,
I think it passes down to the next person.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that, but they can keep playing
that would be,
them.
Yeah,
because right now the rules, if you win one, you can't register for another one. So that means you can't play that format for the rest of the season, which I totally get. As long as you can pass the invite down or something.
Right.
If you want to go to the game every weekend, please do.
Well, because it's good testing, right? Like even if I'm qualified, I still want to play in high level tournaments where I know everybody else is going to be trying to do the cutting edge in standard technology, whatever it happens to be that week. I need to keep my finger on that pulse, so not being able to play in those tournaments sucks. I just wonder what's going to happen if I'm already qualified and then I win. Like when I get to the finals, I guess, like, because you got to be very careful. For those of you listening out there, real life tournaments, there's a lot of pitfalls you can get into, from judge calls to all kinds of stuff. Prize splitting is something that is not familiar. A lot of players who aren't playing competitively all the time are not familiar with how to prize split. You should never, before you even sit down with your opponent, if you think there's a chance to split or somebody's talking about splitting in the top 4 or whatever, call a judge over and make sure you tell them that you're interested in a prize split. How do we go about doing this? They'll explain. If you just offer, oh, I'm already qualified, why don't you give me the cash or whatever, and I'll give you the invite, that is going to get you in big trouble. You cannot make deals like that. You have to be very careful about what kind of arrangements you can make. Anyway, make sure you call a judge when it gets to that point. But Star City Games taking over is huge. When now that we have these tournaments back in the hands of an actual big, well-established tournament organizer who has excellent relationships with the judge community, who has excellent, tournament logistics for running tournaments. They've done it so long and so often that I think this is a huge bonus for. I don't know if you guys talked about this on a previous podcast. It's a huge deal. This is a couple of weeks ago. This news, or a few weeks ago now.
Yeah.
So I wonder what they're going to do with those prizes if somebody does win an RCQ and then they win another one. Does it go to the second place or third place? How does that change? Yeah, because then there's no point in playing the final match, right? You just kind of auto prize split at that point. But I don't know how that works. It'll be interesting. Cool. So yeah, Standard's in a good place, even though the competitive season is focused on Standard right now, and all the content creators. I listen to a lot of other podcasts and watch streamers and read articles and everything, and everybody says the same thing right now about Standard. If someone asks them, what is the best deck, what should I play next weekend, everybody's like, I don't know. Play what you think is good out of these 5 decks. All of these decks are fine right now. You can win with there's a bunch of different decks that are viable. There's no consensus on what is the best deck right now. Mono Red's really good. Ban Toxic's really Domain obviously still seeing a lot of play. Do you bring a deck that beats the well-known established decks like Esper Midrange and Domain? Or do you beat a deck that's going to beat up the decks that are trying to do what you're doing by next leveling Domain and playing aggro? Do you beat the aggro? Do you beat very interesting place for Standard right now, and I don't hear any consensus among all the top, content creators about what they should be playing. What is the best deck? What's the best thing you can do in Standard? It's really interesting. So maybe the new set shakes it up further. We'll see, but I don't know. Is there anything else? We've been talking for quite a while. Should we?
It's been a long one.
Wrap it up.
It's been great.
It's been a great discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Lots to talk about. So
yeah,
I can't wait to crack my first play booster and scratch that off the list, the bucket list. I haven't held one. I haven't opened one yet. They're weird. So many rares.
Either. Yeah, so many rares.
List cards and wonky stuff. I have no idea.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
I'll tell you, just as a sort of a last thing, what card I opened up out of my play booster today from the list that I played in my sealed deck.
What'd you got?
From Invasion. It was Putrid Warrior. That is a common zombie soldier. For white-black, 2/2, when it deals damage, choose one. Each player loses a life, or each player gains a life.
I had an Orzhov soldier deck back in the day with these in it. I love this so much.
What?
I did.
Wow.
It was kitchen table jank, not a meta of any kind. But I 100% ran these. That makes me so happy.
What are these in limited? These just have to be it's just terrible. It's just a terrible card.
I'll tell you, I was playing two-headed giant today. So each player losing a life means the
okay.
The team lost 2.
Double dip on those. Yeah.
We found the spot for this card. Two-headed giant.
I love it so much.
Beautiful. Cool. Well, hopefully the new set treats us well. I can't wait to draft it this week. Should be fun. You guys are gonna be playing some limited?
Oh, for sure.
Arena?
More than likely. I definitely am going to be picking up a whole ton of packs and just brewing my face off on day one. I know I should be drafting. I know that's the smart thing to do as far as the arena economy goes.
No, you brew, baby.
The number of I dare you build arounds in this set is just through the roof, and it's well, challenge accepted. Let's go.
It's funny. We were talking about Standard. A lot of the set reviews are the same thing. A lot of people are saying, how good is this set? How powerful, etc. And a lot of people are like, I don't know. It looks like there are a lot of powerful, build around cards and stuff, but how many of them are traps? A lot of them are traps.
Well, let's find out.
So, it'll be really interesting to see. But
yeah, well, that's the thing too. I hear a lot of it's funny. What I hear is this card's great, this card's great, this card's great, this card's great. But the set's not that great. How is this? This is not adding up, guys.
Listen,
so I think
the
set's good.
Just to speak on that for just a moment, we are used to having so many overpowered cards in our sets. And I think that Karlov Manor is a lower powered standard set overall.
Just average.
That doesn't make the set or the cards bad. But taking a look at it in comparison to what we've gotten over at least the last year, yeah, it's lower powered. It's not going to be as good as your cards were before. We had insane cards in New Capenna and Kami Gobbleblock. That stuff is going to be rotating out in September. Do you mean to tell me you still want to play a standard format that's significantly overpowered? Like,
we got to throttle it back at some point.
I enjoy the slower pace of limited. I kind of like how I don't think there's going to be I don't believe there's going to be a breakout deck featuring a bunch of Karlov Manor cards, but your current decks are going to get a lot of new toys. And I think that is indicative of a well-designed set to where it's not super overpowered, but it can add to what I have. And remember that Karlov Manor is the first set that they designed with the extension of standard in mind. So maybe we'll creep back up. Thunder Junction going into
because
Bloom, whatever Morn. No, Bloomborough.
Yeah, and then Duskmorn. Yeah.
Bring me the overpowered squirrel cards. Like, I'd be totally okay with that. But yeah, I'm totally fine with a lower powered set that gives us new toys.
I agree, and again, that trajectory of sets, like when we had an 8-set kind of rotation in standard, you get to set 8, and then it would reset back down to 4 sets, and a bunch would rotate out. And used to see a very clear delineation of power all the way up the curve. The first set was big, and then we saw a couple weaker sets, and then they would get better and better, because as you get to the end of the chain, I mean, as a 7th set or 8th set out of 8, you have to be pretty impactful to have a meaningful impact on standard. You have to be a very powerful set to have an impact when the format is that big. So you would see the more powerful sets land later or right at the beginning. The ones in the middle wouldn't really, but what you said is interesting. So yeah, Manor... Murders at Karlov Manor is kind of falling in the middle, so traditionally should be kind of a weaker set, but also they knew that it was a 3-year rotation with this set, so I think you're right, they definitely dialed it down, but slower limited format, best. The best limited formats are all slow formats.
Yeah.
All of them. All of the all-timers that everybody loves. Cons. You saw Cons come to Arena in December, and the first thing a lot of limited players who had never drafted these old sets before said was, what? 3-mana 2/2s, and nobody does anything till turn 5 when everybody's unmorphing all these. This is so bad. Like all these vanilla creatures. Like, so many Arena players have never seen a vanilla creature in their life, and I'm like, limited is better when it's a bunch of vanilla creatures. It's not as good when it's a 1-mana 1/1 that flies and makes a map token, and then they're like, what? No, those ridiculous 1-drops.
And those formats test your ability to attack and block efficiently, identify the value of everything on the field, and those little nuanced decisions that are often relevant even in the higher power games. You get to practice those in those slower power formats. And I'm a firm believer to all the casual people out there who are like, I don't stress being good, I'm just here to have fun. You will have so much more fun playing Magic if you are better at it. Like, that's... And it's not just because you're winning, but like you see the opportunities for those really cool plays where identifying how to attack, how to block. And for me, those kind of fundamentals started to solidify when I started playing more limited. That's what got that. Because like I realized, like, if I make a bad trade here, I'm going to lose this game.
Very combat oriented. And learning how to translate combat and go like, what are the good blocks? What is my opponent? How are they going to block when I attack them? How would I block if I were them? Like, all these kind of things. I agree with you. I think I tell people to become a student of the game. 100%. That's the way I describe it. Don't just like play the game, learn about the game. And that means not just practicing. Obviously, there's no substitute for practice and experience, but when you're not playing Magic, read articles. Listen. If you're listening to this podcast right now, you're doing it right. You are becoming a student of the game. You are studying the game outside of the game. When I first got into competitive poker and other games, I read a bunch of books. books about poker, but that's what other players who I knew were very good at poker told me to do to get me going, and they helped immensely. You're not gonna, read articles and blah blah and suddenly have epiphanies like and go and win an RC or whatever. It's a slow thing, but you're building on that foundation of knowledge of the game, and playing competitively is something many players shy away from, but I really feel like when you do play competitively, when you do get a little bit better, you become a student of the game, you enjoy the game at such a deeper level, like what you just said, Ham.
Yes.
And so if you love Magic, get into competitive, start studying the game, start reading about it, listening to things, and you'll enjoy it much more. So get
Even
more
if
out of
you
it.
primarily play like Commander, those crazy Commander moments happen because you can see the lines. If you can't see the lines, you can't have those great turns.
Very true.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway,
So a good place to end it, maybe.
yeah, I think so. So yes, thanks guys. Let's go ahead and before we sign off, let's go ahead and go around the horn and let people know where they can find you on the internet. I mean, if they stuck with us for this long, maybe they want more. So yeah. So Damien, let's go ahead and start with you. Where can people find you?
If you want more ranting about Magic, you can find me doing that 6 days a week. Actually, 5 days a week, but the 6th day I try and avoid playing Magic. But every weekend, I do the arena opens and all that stuff. I try and play all the competitive events. I'm on Damien F16 on Twitch, Damien F16 on YouTube, dropping daily gameplay videos of a bunch of different games, including Magic. But and that's it. That's where you can find me. How about you, Favretto?
Yeah, so I'm Carlo. You could find me on all of the platforms, Twitch especially, at @CFavretto_Jr. I play a lot of community-created decks all the time, but since it's been RCQ season, I've been doing 2 competitive nights a week. One, playing a deck that's done well recently, like in a standard, won a standard RCQ, or did well in a Magic Online challenge. I have Discord vote on that for that deck for Metagame Monday. And then I play my RCQ deck one other night during the week for some practice and testing for the upcoming RCQs. So we'll be continuing to do that. I did also just start a YouTube channel. It's brand new. I don't know what I'm doing, but it's fine. We're traversing our way through the YouTube space. You can find me at @CFavretto_Jr. there as well. All of those links are below. I'm also on all the other socials like Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. So we are getting ready to go to MagicCon Chicago in a couple weeks. So we will be there in case you would like to say hello and get a token from me. I will have Clue tokens available and Luna cat tokens available as well as a bunch of stickers and stuff. If you want to say hello, I'll actually have a creator meet and greet on Friday at MagicCon Chicago from 4 to 6 p.m.
Nice.
Dude, love it. But yeah.
How about you, Ham?
Yeah,
Where can they
so
find you?
I'm Hemox42 on Twitch, which is my primary platform. That is my first content creation love. So that is just where I'm at. I also do have a YouTube channel as well, also Hemox42. And on top of that, so Carlo, you're not the only one who made a brand new channel. So hopefully we could have a meeting of the minds and help each other out. Because just earlier today, I posted my very first TikTok.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no.
So,
it's all
I'm
downhill
sorry.
from here. Just kidding.
I had a silly short form idea, and I'm like, oh, that's the platform for it, isn't it?
That
so
is,
I'm also posting them onto Twitter and on Instagram, at Hawks42 on those places. So if you want to see me in a business suit, like it's a character that I did for another podcast called Piggy Banks, and it's literally just pitching card ideas to Piggy Banks that he tries to refuse. It's very silly, but it's me talking to myself for less than a minute, and it's just little bits, and we talk about individual. The point of those is ultimately break down a card in kind of a pitch meeting format is what we're doing. So
it's elevator pitch.
Yeah, the elevator. What's the elevator pitch on this card? And I try to find opportunities for jokes. And anyway.
Cool.
It's fun. I'm having fun with it so far. I've got a couple in the hopper. Those are going to be releasing on all the socials. So hopefully, you come see those and check me live over on the Twitches, because that's where I want to be. I'm doing all this other stuff to get people into there so it can sustain, because that's the thing. I'm a big fan. Anyway, so yes. Like and subscribe to all the things. There will also be links, of course, in the description on all of the different apps and everything. Wherever you are watching and or listening to this, you can find links to all of these fine folks, as well as other members of Team MagicJank. So definitely go click on all the things, drop all the follows, all the subscriptions. Just do it. It's great. We appreciate you. And between all of us, we're posting so much stuff on the internet.
Too much. I'm posting way too much stuff. I need to cut down the number of games. It's my birthday coming up in 2 weeks. As the last little thing, I totally
heck
forgot
yeah,
about my birthday. Gonna do a 24-hour stream, and yeah, we're gonna post a bunch of that stuff on
let's go.
on YouTube and stuff, and got some new games and DLCs and
Sweet.
stuff. But
Any
yeah,
ones that
I'm
you're
like
looking
you.
forward to the most?
The Resident Evil 4 DLC we're gonna be playing through, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Thronefall. I reinstalled Dragon's Dogma because the second Dragon's Dogma is coming out. I don't know if you guys like these kind of RPGs. That one is a legendary RPG I loved, so gonna be playing some of that. And Magic, of course. The new set will be out, so we'll be doing a bunch of Magic and all night, baby. So join us. Anyway, sorry, I didn't. Yeah,
no, you're
join
good.
all of us. All
Yeah,
the links will be down there. Yeah.
I haven't played Dragon's Dogma, but I saw the trailer for the second one. I was like, oh crap, do I need to
It's
do
gonna be
this now? I
sweet.
think I might have to because that looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many great games out there, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
Good stuff. Well, in any event, thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you. We will be back next week to talk about stuff and things and share kind of our feelings after we get a chance to actually play with some of these cards. So we're going to be doing some testing, maybe playing some limited. We'll reconvene next week and tell you kind of our thoughts and first impressions on how things are playing out. Where we were right, where we were wrong, things that were surprising. Because, they'll be there. In any event.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for watching.
See you later.